So good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. So we are starting the Public Safety Commission meeting. Today is July 10th, 2025. And we have we have total around five agendas currently. And we'll start with the first one.
So, Chair Doss, if you could call the meeting to order officially.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. But I am calling the meeting.
All right, so for the minutes, the meeting begins at 6:03. And we will begin with the roll call. So Chair Doss,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rajram,
Here.
Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
and Commissioner Sapahara. Great. Let's begin with the minutes. You pull up the minutes. Okay. Did anyone have any changes for the minutes?
No.
All right. If I could have a motion to accept the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, could I have a second?
Fine.
All right, roll call vote, Chair Doss,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rajram,
Yes.
Commissioner Baker. And Commissioner Sapahara is absent. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, so we have the new business right now.
Written comments. Written comments.
We can compare the first or last.
Written communication.
Okay, first.
Is there nothing?
No written communications were received. No oral comms. All right, oral communications. Two folks?
Yes. We currently have two requests to speak. Just a reminder that for oral for items not coming on the agenda. So first we'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, everybody, thank you. Chair and Vice Chair and other members. So, and anyway, I was planning to come here to listen to the subcommittee updates. But yesterday, since whatever happened in Houston, I'm wondering if this is the right forum to address it, I'm not sure. But Pata was there, we had a meeting of all block leaders a few weeks ago. And everybody was talking about the emergency preparedness. As we have a lot of aging population, like people don't know, and same thing happened there, which is the alerts came at night, people actually turn off their cell phones. So there was a talk of installing sirens everywhere or something like that. So I'm not sure if this is the right forum to kind of suggest it, and will this forum take it to the city? But I'm wondering about that. And that is the suggestion I had, because there was a concern that a lot of old people, they don't have cell phones, and we are in such a fire zone. If something happens at the middle of the night, it is going to be hard. So that is what I just wanted.
Thank you, Sonali. And next we'll have Adelaide.
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 I'm Adelaide. I've been a resident of Cupertino 20 plus years now. And all this time I've been living on Rainbow Drive. Sonali is actually a neighbor of mine. The problem I wanted to bring up was, and I'd already emailed the commissioner. The problem is we live on Rainbow Drive, which is a stretch of mile from the end that's Stelling. The sort of a straight piece of road. It's about half a mile from end to end. And what we've been noticing over the last few years is people have been using that stretch of road to speed up as they're going from Stelling to Deanza or Deanza to Stelling. And there is no hindrance for them. And kind of multiple times I've seen people go at 50, 60 miles per hour. That's one problem. The second problem is there's a turning lane. So it's a very wide road. So it has sort of two sides to the road as well as a big center lane for people to turn. And I've on many occasions I've seen people use the center lane to overtake. Sometimes and then they'll kind of overtake the person, or they'll just use the center lane and then kind of take a left turn going further. That's second problem. The third problem is there is also an intersection at Poppy Way and Rainbow. which a lot of people used to kind of go across, especially as they walk towards the enjoyment or other parks in the neighborhood. And there is really no safety protection for them. I think they've put like reflectors, there have been flags. There are a lot of kids walking, people with dogs walking, and especially with people going at speed, this actually creates a pretty dangerous situation. So the request to the commission is actually to look at, are there any sort of inhibitions or any measures we can put for people who are speeding up? First, we should try and measure like what people are going at. But are there things like stop signs we can put? I think one of the suggestions I made was put a stop sign on Garden side or a stop sign on Astor to reduce the speed that people go at and maybe kind of slow things down a bit. Potentially maybe a flashing sidewalk kind of crossing on Poppy Way, or maybe speed bumps, or sort of make them specific turning lanes for people to kind of sort of scheduled sort of distances, right? So that's kind of what I just want to bring to the commission, because I've been noticing over the last few years, this has been getting worse, and people get looked at.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. And that closes out for oral communication.
Thank you.
I have a question with regard to the oral communications. So given that two obviously concerning matters have been brought up, we're just going to listen to the matter, or do we have to request as a commission, request somebody to take an action item? What has to say?
You can bring them up during future agenda items.
Okay.
So next agenda is the meeting minutes. I think we already accepted that, right? So next one on the second one is studies in state law mandated update to the health and safety element. And the recommended action is that the Public Safety Commission receive the report and provide input to the recommended policy areas and the program with the health and safety element. So is someone presenting this, or we are just reading it right now?
Yes.
You are presenting, right?
Yeah, well, I'll introduce myself to people I haven't met. Luke Conley. I'm the Assistant Director of Community Development for the City of Cupertino. I'll just give a little background before I turn it over to our consultants. We have two of them on Zoom, Jacqueline Bronson-Rohr and Tammy Seal, who are the leads preparing the safety element. Little background is the safety element is being updated because the city recently did its housing element update last year. So state law requires that the safety element with that. There's also some new information, which I think the presentation will cover in pretty good detail. This identical presentation was given 2 nights ago to the planning community hall. So we wanted to also get input from the Public Safety Commission, since you have sort of similar but different viewpoints. Planning is more land use focused, so issues like fire hazards and that may be of more concern. But the safety element encompasses really all aspects of safety: response times, evacuations, fire, any hazard now that would be addressed. So given your more health and safety focus rather than land use, we wanted to get your input on this as well. There is no action being asked of the commission to approve anything tonight. We don't have even a draft safety element in front of you, but again, we want to get your input on any issues you feel could be unique or important to Cupertino, and to make sure that those would get addressed in the safety element as the update proceeds. So again, I'll turn it over to our consultants. Jacqueline, I believe, will be taking the lead, and we'll be happy to answer any questions after the presentation.
Thanks, Luke. I will go ahead and share my screen. Is everyone able to see the PowerPoint?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So good evening, Public Safety Commissioners. Thank you for hearing the study session this evening. Let me see. There we go. So this presentation will start with a brief set of introductions, provide an overview of the health and safety element update process and the components of that process, and then go over potential policy concepts for inclusion in the health and safety element. So as Luke mentioned, the Community Development Department is leading the effort to update the health and safety element. My name is Jacqueline Protzman Rohr with Placeworks, and I'm the project manager on the consultant team. And I'm joined this evening by Tammy Seal, who is the principal in charge on the consulting team as well. And now for an overview of the health and safety element update. So to start off, what is the safety element? It is one of the mandatory elements of a general plan focusing on natural and human-caused hazards within and surrounding Cupertino, as well as emergency preparedness and response. So the current element was adopted in 2014 during the Comprehensive General Plan update. And the goal of this element is to protect the city and help increase resilience to natural disasters for residents, businesses, infrastructure, and the environment. These hazards include flooding, wildfire, emergency evacuations, and hazards that may worsen due to climate change, such as extreme heat and drought. While state law requires the safety element to be updated when the housing element is updated, the health and safety element is just one part of Cupertino's overall approach to protecting the community against hazards, and it integrates with several other city documents to do this. So the health and safety element is a high-level, broad policy document that discusses the city's comprehensive public safety approach. There's the Climate Action Plan 2.0, which is the comprehensive plan to reduce GHG emissions and increase resilience throughout the city. There's also the Santa Clara County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan, which has a Cupertino annex, which is a more detailed short-term action plan. And then the Emergency Response Plan, which is the city's internal plan for emergency response and recovery. So the safety element will integrate information from these plans, tying into them as appropriate to help create a cohesive safety approach. There are a few other benefits of updating the safety element, which are to ensure consistency with other general plan elements and city plans, comply with California government code requirements, and improve eligibility for grant funding to implement resiliency and hazard mitigation projects. So the current health and safety element addresses some of the items required by state law, and those are found in California Government Code Section 65302G, which houses all of the safety element requirements. So the current health and safety element has mapping of flood hazard zones and dam failure zones. It talks about responsible agencies for flood protection and fire protection and coordination with those agencies. It has policies for minimizing development in flood hazard zones, and it also has a few policies for protecting the community from wildfire hazards. So this health and safety element update will build off of the existing element to meet current state requirements. Since the previous update of the general plan in 2014, several new laws related to the safety element have come into effect. These updates to the government code increase requirements in the wildfire and flood sections to identify responsible agencies and ensure coordination with these agencies, as well as minimize the risk to new buildings and essential facilities. There's also a focus on climate change adaptation and resilience, with SB 379 requiring safety elements to prepare a vulnerability assessment that identifies risks to hazards, and then develop a comprehensive set of goals, policies, and implementation actions to build resilience in the community. AB 2140 allows for the incorporation of the local hazard mitigation plan, which makes the city potentially eligible for increased disaster relief funds. And then three of the new laws, SB 99, AB 747, and AB 1409, focus on evacuation. And these require the AB 747 and AB 1409 require the identification of evacuation routes and location, capacity, safety, and viability. And then SB 99 requires the identification of evacuation constrained residential areas. So the city is currently conducting a citywide AB 747 evacuation study with a different consulting team at Fair and Pierce. And this study will identify evacuation routes and locations, and then detail information about their capacity, safety, and viability under different hazard or emergency scenarios. The vulnerability assessment is the other main analysis conducted as part of the safety element update. So this assessment was prepared pursuant to SB 379 or Government Code Section 65302G4, and to evaluate how people and key community assets in Cupertino, such as buildings, infrastructure, economic systems, may be affected by climate change hazards and the degree to which they're vulnerable. This study followed the four-step process outlined in the California Adaptation Planning Guide, including identifying exposure to hazards, analyzing the sensitivity of populations and community assets and the potential impacts of the hazards, evaluating adaptive capacity, which is the ability of a population or community asset to prepare for, respond to, and recover from hazards using existing tools, funds, and resources, and then pull all of that information together to assess vulnerability. So the vulnerability assessment was also based on several previous studies conducted by the city, including 3 high-level vulnerability assessments and 1 adaptation gap analysis. These are the climate-related hazards included in the vulnerability assessment. So these include more frequent poor air quality due to smoke and other conditions, increases in frequency of drought, more frequent extreme heat events, increased flooding and higher sea levels, more intense rainfall and severe weather events that can subsequently lead to landslide events, and then more frequent and severe wildfires. So overall, the vulnerability assessment evaluated how these 8 different climate-related hazards may affect 45 different population groups and community assets. And this slide shows the key findings from the vulnerability assessment. So the vulnerability assessment found that Cupertino's populations and assets are most vulnerable to flooding, extreme heat, and wildfire. And overall, residents tend to be most vulnerable to extreme heat, human health hazards, and flooding, which directly affect health outcomes. The most vulnerable population groups include those with chronic illnesses or disabilities, seniors living alone, households in poverty, and persons experiencing homelessness. Infrastructure and key services are also highly vulnerable, especially energy delivery and communication infrastructure, the transportation network, which includes public transit services, and water and wastewater services. And all of these can be disrupted by flooding that may cause roadways to become impassable, extreme heat that strain the electrical transmission lines, and severe storms that may cause public safety power shutoffs. So that's the background. And now we'll move into policy concepts. So based on new state laws, the findings of the vulnerability assessment and the AB 747 evacuation study, we've prepared a set of broad policy concepts for your review and feedback. And these policy concepts were prepared in coordination with the Emergency Management Department, Santa Clara County Fire Department, and Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office. So the policy concepts are broken into 6 main topics in the health and safety element. The first 5 are in the current version of the safety element, and then the climate change resilience topic is being proposed in this update to respond to the requirements of SB 379. There are 2 topics that were not included in this update that are currently in the safety element, and those are the electromagnetic fields and noise sections of the element. So each of the following policy concept slides are also divided into 3 categories, existing, updated, and new. So the existing policies will show those that already exist in the adopted safety element. Updated are those that would be updated as part of this process. And new are gaps that we found in the policies and state law, and these would be proposed as part of this update. And then we've also added asterisks next to those policy concepts directly related to new development, redevelopment, or existing development. So on the very first section is emergency preparedness and response. So there are several existing policy concepts. So coordination with regional and local agencies, protecting Cupertino broadly from sea level rise through a few different means, continuing crime prevention through awareness programs and site design. And then there's one updated concept, and this is to continue to provide emergency notifications, communications, and then education materials. And then the update would be to add multiple languages and formats appropriate for people with access and functional needs. For new policy concepts, and the first three are related to development. The first is to ensure new development and redevelopment comply with the most current version of the California Building Code and any local ordinances. We're requiring new development to have at least 2 ingress and egress routes and explore secondary means of access in evacuation constrained residential areas. Require hillside development to provide and maintain adequate emergency access. Ensure adequate evacuation through maintenance of potential evacuation routes, and ensuring adequate response times for emergency services. And this is a longer section because it includes a lot. So there are a couple more new policy concepts. Integrate the current multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan by reference into the health and safety element. And this is to help comply with AB 2140. Maintaining interjurisdictional cooperation and coordination with agencies. Working with Santa Clara County to provide alerts about emergency situations through a few different systems and in multiple languages and formats. And then working with local agencies, volunteer groups, and community-based organizations to provide resources and educational materials to help residents respond to different hazard events. In the fire hazards section, there is one existing policy concept, discourage the use of private security gates that act as a barrier to emergency response. And then there are a few updated, 3 related to development. So require new development in high and very high fire hazard severity zones to comply with California state minimum fire safe regulations for a variety of components, including defensible space, ingress and egress, emergency access, and water supply. Coordinate long-term water supply for firefighting through water providers and water extension letters. Require existing public and private roadways to comply with the most current fire safety regulations. And then involve Santa Clara County Fire Department early in development projects to ensure modifications as needed. For new policy concepts, the first is to avoid new residential development in high-risk fire areas. Then maintain adequate fire protection and enhance fire service capabilities through a few different means. Prioritizing vegetation management along roadways and open space areas. Develop plans for rebuilding and redevelopment after major wildfires. And then offer educational materials, rebates, and incentives for property owners to retrofit their buildings and properties for fire safety. The next topic area is hazardous waste and materials. So there are several existing policy concepts that we're not proposing any changes to. Coordinate enforcement of standards for containment and general handling and disposal of hazardous materials. Providing educational resources to residents about local sources of hazardous materials. Supporting efforts to reduce the level of risk from toxic and hazardous materials in the city through regulations and education. There's one updated policy concept, and that's to require environmental site assessments and mitigation for development near hazardous waste and material sites. And then one new policy concept to continue to require radio frequency studies for wireless developments and address any public concerns. The next section is seismic and geologic hazards. This one also doesn't have too many new policy concepts. So existing, requiring geologic and hazard assessments for development in hazard-prone areas, increasing public awareness of seismic and geologic risks, encouraging retrofits of existing buildings and facilities, maintaining and sharing up-to-date seismic and geologic hazard data. And then for a new policy concept, limit hillside grading on steep slopes to minimize landslide and erosion risks. Just a few more sections to go. So the next one is flooding and inundation hazards. Existing coordinate dam-related evacuation plans and notification systems to ensure preparation citywide. Maintain the structural and operational integrity of essential public facilities and services during and after flood events. Under updated, we have allow existing non-residential uses in floodplains and then limit new development in the 100-year floodplains and regulatory floodways and encourage open space and recreation uses in these areas. And then there is one new policy concept, and that's maintaining effective stormwater drainage systems through site design and retrofits. This is the last of the policy topics, climate change resilience. And again, this was directly proposed to be added directly in response to the climate change vulnerability assessment and also SB 379. So there are no existing or updated policy concepts. All of these would be new. Work with property owners in new developments to enhance shading through installation of shade structures and green infrastructure. And this is specifically for extreme heat. Encourage new development and existing property owners to incorporate sustainability features into their facilities, integrating extreme heat as a significant hazard of concern, working with water providers to implement water conservation programs, increasing the resiliency of city-owned structures, establishing community resilience centers community-wide outside of hazard zones and ensuring adequate transit to these facilities, and then using green infrastructure and nature-based solutions wherever possible to absorb the impacts of different hazards. So with that, that concludes the presentation, and staff in our PlaceWorks team are available to answer any questions you may have.
So that was a lot to take in, but again, you don't have to take action or approve anything tonight. And I think the whole, like I said early, is sort of high level comments in terms of, you know, safety issues. I think for everybody, wildfires kind of climbed the list lately because of what had happened in Southern California and other areas. Most of the state had some risk of fire hazard, but I think just in general, any safety hazard concerns that you feel the safety element address. And if you have any thoughts on how best to address those, that would be helpful. And I guess I'd also say, since it is a lot to take in, if you think of something afterwards, you could always email it to us and we would get it to the consultant. So anyhow, between all of us, we should be hopefully be able to answer your questions.
Okay, so I've got my light on and anyone else has questions, so I'm next. When it said health and safety, first thing that came to mind, and I don't know who here from the city can answer this question, but we used to have an emergency response manager that left. And have a replacement, are we planning on getting one? I don't know who can answer here, I don't know if it's you.
I can answer your first part is we do not have a replacement.
I realize that, but
And I figured you knew that, but I do not know if and when that replacement is coming. That could certainly be a comment in terms of making sure cities are staffed adequately. Emergency responses or whatever type, but if I had an answer, I'd like to give it to you.
so that would be the first point we have to make note of, is that we need to get that position filled. We can talk about, you know, emergency response to the blue in the face, but there's no one to implement it. That's a little bit of a shame. So that's my first question. If somebody else has, I have plenty more questions to go. I've got written a lot of things here, but
Yeah, let's give it a shot.
All right, yeah, mine's pretty short, actually. So like some of the new policy concepts I guess like, is the goal to basically like distill that into like policy that becomes law in Cupertino, or is that how that works?
Yeah, I mean, but policy is generally sort of above what shapes the law. So some of your policies would then take form of an ordinance, like if you gotta limit loud noise at night, you would then have an ordinance that would say the decibel level past a certain time can't exceed this. So your policies kind of precede how your laws would be developed around those. So think of this as the framework to develop laws from.
I see.
I had a follow-up question to exactly what you were saying. So there are a couple of things that came to mind in all of the slides, whether it was emergency preparedness, whether it was fire hazards, flood, etc. There was something about encouraging existing residents to upgrade or do something. As a resident, my flag is up. Like, I am not spending money on something that I don't believe I need to do because my house has been approved and considered safe so far. So what does that entail? Does anyone have an idea, or is just we're speculating on what happens?
I could let Jacqueline and others add too, but I think first of all, educating people if they have particular risks, like if you were in a high fire zone, if
Okay.
you were near a flood zone. Something to make you aware, and if there's anything you could do, whether it's expensive or not, some things might be really cheap. I get that you could have some things, if it's construction on your home, that could entail quite a bit of money,
Mhm.
depending on what it is. But I think first and foremost is to make people aware. I mean, some things are actually required. And I think with like changing fire standards, you're not gonna have an option if you live in a high fire hazard zone to do construction that could put you at risk. There's things that if you live in that zone, you will be required to do.
So do we have a map that shows us where the fire?
We do, yes, and it
And
was,
where's,
I think that is the map that the council adopted on 17.
Okay.
That is available online for sure. But again, encourage doesn't necessarily mean require. Encourage really means encourage, whereas there are requirements that are under building code or fire code that you have to do, but that those only kick in if you are doing a major remodel or you're rebuilding your home.
but it still could be
Because that's-
encouraged to do those things,
Right.
even if you weren't in a high fire.
right, the point I'm trying to make is that anybody who does anything with their home has to come through planning department.
To the
And I'm
building
sure-
department, correct, yeah.
Building
Yeah.
department planning. So they will anyway encourage or rather enforce whatever is the required work, whether it's fire or flood or something else. So that is a given. But will there be a situation where we're constantly asking residents to encourage this process and
Encourage, this means education, like Luke said, you know, it's basically talking to you about, hey, you have a wood roof, wood shaker roof in a
Mhm.
very high fire zone. You are encouraged to change, when you do replace it, change it out to a class A type roof so that your house doesn't burn down.
And it could be similar to things like go through the drought, talk about how do you use water more wisely. Drought tolerant plants, things like that, getting smart about your water usage. Encourage is gonna mean the city's not gonna require it. It's not like there's going to be enforcement if you don't do it.
yes, I just wanna be, make
Yes.
sure we are aware of the fact that we stick to the definition of encourage. And don't find ourselves, me and other residents, I don't know if I'm in a high fire, so I have to go back and check. But what I think I heard recently, thanks to the wildfires that have occurred, everything to the west of Linda Vista is possibly a high fire.
A lot of it is.
A lot of it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so in that case, why did we, so the follow on to that would be, we have all these wonderful, as I call them, Vina laws, SB 30, SB this, SB that, and you know, bonus density, bonus something else, and PMR units being thrown in, and all of these, and there's a very good example, which is Everidge Code. That is a high fire zone, even without anybody declaring it. You
Very high
lived in
fire.
that
It's a
area,
very
you
high
know
fire.
it's a high fire zone, and you don't need a state map to figure that. out. You live in the area, there's one street you get out, in and out with, and that's Bub. And then perpendicular to that, there's McLennan, and there are a lot of homes there, and to approve 50 or whatever the number was. and allow density bonuses, any other ridiculous law that they come up with, that's a fire hazard. What are we gonna do about something like that?
So that is a project that we can't discuss today because that's not on the agenda for one thing, but with that said. If you were to replace your home, you would have to build it to the fire code standards. Similarly, any new construction, whether it's, for example, the Edward Court project or any other project, they would have to meet building and fire code requirements.
That's one part of it. Then there was something about evacuation plans. That's my bigger concern. What happens there?
And that is something that is still under evaluation.
We're
That is-
just starting the evacuation plan.
So evacuation planning, whether it indicates that, the city needs to widen streets or whatever comes out of it, and I'm just
Right.
throwing things out. But those are things that the city will have to plan for to accommodate evacuation.
Yes, to me, it's a huge risk, that project, but that aside, the evacuation plans will be of great interest, I think, in a lot of places. That's something I think we should have some kind of, survey or get the people's input. There's a lot of people with a lot of opinions about. I know on the west side, because that's where I live, but I'm sure there's equally as many concerns on the east side in different places around here. So should we do something that says when these evacuation plans come up, and I know you guys do a good job, but it would be nice to get feedback from the residents on exactly what it is you decide is within the law, but may not be something that we want to be part of. I mean, if there's a fire up on the hill, there's two streets that we have to get out of. One is Rainbow, one is McClellan, and the connecting part is Bud. And if you've ever gone there, there's one lane. During school times, you're not talking about a fire hazard. I'm talking about Kennedy time. The place is, bumper to bumper from Rainbow to McClellan. If any of us want to get out, we avoid that time. Imagine if there's a fire hazard. So this evacuation plan is going to be really, really important for us. And I think the feedback I would give is that we need to do not just a study and come up with a plan, but actually get feedback from the residents on whether that's feasible enough or, what are their inputs on it? Because pardon my saying this, but oftentimes when there are developers involved, where there are, different departments involved that get into the mix of things, there are some things that say, oh, that's okay, can be handled kind of comment that'll come out of the city. So not saying anything about you guys, I'm just saying that's the kind of, in any given city that happens. Okay, so we don't want a situation where the evacuation plan has not gone through the residents. One. And the second thing is whatever you come up with as an encouragement truly should be encouragement and not laws. Because I believe there's one city that has already implemented these fire hazard things, so the city has to, the residents have to upgrade all of their whatever the requirements were for that city, and I believe it's Belmont, so it's, people are going to be really frustrated with this, so just feedback on that.
No, it's very good. I mean, yes, cities can go further than the state requirements. They can't undo them. But so far, the fire map we adopted followed the state recommendation. It didn't add additional property.
It's the floor amount, didn't go above.
Okay.
And I guess one thing I should say too is that, like as Jacqueline said, all of the elements, the safety element included, are part of the general plan. So to change or adopt anything, it takes city council action. So this will require hearings from city council,
Okay.
not a staff decision.
Okay.
So they will be looking at the entirety of this,
Okay.
probably late this year.
Okay.
We're hoping to do by the end of the calendar year.
Excellent. That's a good point, because then any feedback.
That gives
you have-
everybody an opportunity to speak,
Yeah.
Obviously you can comment ahead of time, but there will be a notice of public hearing to weigh in on your comments directly with us.
Okay.
So I want to keep it short. Thank you for the very detailed presentation, and thank you for you guys being here. So based on what I'm hearing from residents is like, it could be speculation, but most of the residents are afraid that this kind of yearly reviews or re-inspections is going to be burdensome for that. That's one thing I'm hearing. And second thing is, we understand like, okay, nothing has changed in 20 years in the Cupertino homes, but it's just that the colors have changed for the recent adoption, right? The fire safety. So we understand we need to follow the state and all, right? But what I'm hearing from residents is they're very concerned about the inspections and the all this. And I hear some of the complaints, especially the people undergoing some major products, like they have to upgrade the fireplace or get rid of the fireplace. So that is understandable. But based on what I'm hearing from residents, right? I think they're very concerned about the inconvenience that may cause to the existing single family homes and the tenants. That's one thing. And second thing is about the quarries. So I think the fire, we understand we are trying to educate or make them aware for the single family residents and all the tenants. But I think the quarries, what are we doing for the quarries that are like, we have two quarries, right? Stevens Creek and the other one, Lehe. So what are we doing in educating them or preventing the fire spreading from that?
Quarries are outside the city, so that is Santa Clara's jurisdiction, which again, the fire hazard applies statewide. But they are outside Cupertino's jurisdiction. Obviously, we coordinate with the county representatives of the county agencies here, but that isn't something the city regulates, is the quarry themselves and the properties, because they're not in the city.
Okay.
So just as a follow-up with that, the hillside is not the west side, the hillside is part of the county property, right?
Yes.
So who will be responsible for, that's the county still, not the city?
Right.
So somebody builds an SB 30 out there with whatever, then they get permission from who? The county or?
County, correct.
Oh, no.
Right.
And they still have to keep the building.
Yeah, I get the building and fire code requirements, but then the evacuation plan has to take into effect that somebody's building some crazy thing up on the hill. And they all have to come down the hill unless there is another way for them to get out.
Correct. So we are not aware of any projects up in the county that are that high density in that particular part of the county. I know there are certain projects up in Saratoga, but that's well outside of where these evacuation routes are. So I don't know that that would affect.
Would there be, if there is such, what can the city do? In that context, what is within our jurisdiction to do?
There is nothing in the city's jurisdiction because it's out in the county.
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly try to influence the decision as you can with the city council, you know, the board of supervisors, and I know the county has had policies in place for quite some time that where you have a real development, say a vacant property, somebody wants a subdivision or, you know, new construction, not just one home. That those properties are often required to annex to which city would make sense. So if Cupertino were the closest, if it were in Cupertino's sphere of influence, which is just the area outside our city limits, but adjacent to it, the county often requires those developments to incorporate into a city. Mostly because the county is not really staffed for anything. So it's more common, say, like South County, Morning Hill, Gilroy area. But you do also have, say, pockets probably on the fringe of Los Gatos in the hills, Cupertino, Saratoga.
So I have two questions. Okay.
I'll quickly complete. So are we doing any mock drill in coordination with the county, like the disaster recovery or especially under understanding that we are trying to indicate what are we doing? Especially I'm worried about some of these concrete blocks that are there to support the bike lanes. I'm hearing from multiple residents that may hinder the emergency vehicle movement and all.
We will be looking at the evacuation routes through the evacuation plan. So what the road capacity is, if there's any hindrances to that, all of that would come out through the evacuation study, which is literally just starting right now.
Say, for example, the McKellen Road, right? I use
Yeah,
very
we have
heavily.
bike lanes.
Yeah, the bike lane.
Barrier.
Yeah, so the barriers is, I don't know how the emergency vehicle can move on the road, right? That is heavily used part of the city.
So
That's what
that will all be part of the consideration when we're looking at the evacuation routes to make sure that they are qualified to be considered evacuation routes.
Right.
And what would be necessary to make sure that they continue to be viable routes.
Right, again, what I'm hearing from the residents is like a lot of residents feel that, the alternative solutions instead of the concrete blocks, right? So those may help for the emergency vehicles to navigate easily. Is the feedback I'm hearing, and I would like you to consider, right? And one more thing is noise, right? I know noise is not part of this. My house is but my backyard faces 85. Not just that, right? In general, I'm hearing complaints from some other residents about the pickleball courts, especially in the Cupertino CSC, right? Or the Memorial Park, right? The noise is increasing, and I'm hearing the complaints. And it seems even I made some calls for the DOLA after hours. I would like also to hear from the sheriff's point stats when they present, like how they're handling the calls with respect to noise after hours. Probably later. So this is, I mean, it's all related. I know you're not covering the noise in this presentation, but I just want to bring it up.
Yeah, we have heard issues related to pickleball as well.
Right.
That's a very good point, yeah. So, I have a few questions. So, well, thank you, great presentation. So this is a little bit logistic question. So this is a study. So after the study, the recommendations from the experts. Now, what happens after that in the city to implement this and there is no budget and the city is unable to do that? I understand that based on the state mandate, we have to do this. And there are a series of new recommendations I saw, a lot of updates I saw. So how does that track? Basically, if city is not able to implement those for that space and then it is must person implement.
So if I may, now there is, so the health and safety element has a lot. Many of these policies are already in place. Several of these policies are, all what we're doing is just updating them. If you actually look at new policies, there are very few tweaks to new policies. The real main section where we wanted new policies is the resiliency section, which we are required to under state law. Now, with regard to operational stuff that we already do, the tweaks that we're making, we're gonna absorb those into operational things. And those are, of course, prioritized by council based on priorities as well. Emergency, typically they do prioritize emergencies very well. Emergency operations, so they do prioritize budgeting for those things. But when you talk about like more, larger budget items, that's all part of, if it's a actual facility that needs to be built, for example. As an example, let's say if it comes out, you need this big facility to do whatever to service emergency operations. Then that is something that council will budget as part of their board, their CIP process, for example. So there's different ways to kind of address how the money flows. But usually much of these things are really policy related.
Yeah, there's no
operational
budget
items,
and
yeah.
ramifications. Like this could identify what you should do, but then say the council would have to follow through its work.
Yeah, that's something.
Budget.
The should, it's a should, right? It's not must, right? All of this. This is
Not gonna require, yeah,
It's
like.
not, it's not.
And none of the policies that are coming out of this that we're seeing right now is in that should category. Much of what we're seeing is really all things we're already doing or we're gonna tweak within.
Yeah, I saw that. A lot of there's three categories, right? The existing, update, and the new, right? The 50% I saw, 60% of the existing, right? So there are new I saw, like for example, in this room, in the last meeting, we discussed, that emergency response point of view. And there was a discussion happened last meeting, is that the emergency situation, can we have a system that city can alert people and city can communicate to people in an informed way. And we heard there is a budget issue for that. Even sending a letter is a budget issue. So everything costs, right? And that's why it was not. And this time I saw in your recommendation, it is a new recommendation. I saw that emergency response, communication part of it.
Right, but which may not be a letter, right? It may be a digital, like pushing out
Yeah.
information to cell phones.
Digital also we discussed, and that was also
Yep.
the
Absolutely.
cost thing came from the city management office. But there is a cost behind it, that's why it may not be, significant.
Right.
It was discussed in the last meeting, so So what I'm saying this recommendation that is coming, you are saying that it is not a must, it is a recommendation. And then city has to see, the council has to see.
So I don't know that the council will necessarily adopt all the budgets associated with all the items when it adopts the housing element. The budget comes down the road.
Got it.
Right, so right now, you're just adopting the policy. You're saying, this is what we want to do, this is what we aspire to do,
Okay,
and then budget comes later as an option.
and then we can advocate some of the stuff. that is
Exactly.
really important for that,
Exactly.
updating, right?
Right.
Because I can clearly see a few of them, we discussed here, earlier.
Right.
So other question, super related, just want to know that what is the cost for this study, that the different sections of the study that city is spending?
I forget offhand what this is. I really do, because it's also part of a larger contract. It's part of the housing elements, design standard contract that we've had in place for some time. So it's, the overall, all of that was over $1 million.
And this,
Most by far, the
and this is
housing element.
this recurring or this is one time?
So one time for now, the state law says that anytime you update your housing element, you must also update your health and safety element.
And you update your housing element.
So every 8 years,
Eight or
in that
every
sense, and in between, if there is a city, state level, something comes in. Again,
It's probably not one of the elements that gets amended very frequently. I mean, really, the reason why we're looking at it right now is because we're mandated to look at this.
Right.
updated.
okay.
Right.
And we said, last question. You will get a presentation, the detailed presentation, right, of this one, this presentation, we can access it, right?
Oh, did
It's
you
already
access
been
it?
emailed
Yes.
to you, I believe.
Yes.
So can we actually go to the emergency preparedness slide or the fire hazards, any one of them, the new policy?
Yes, I can reshare my
Okay.
screen 1 second. There we go. Did that work? And this is the existing, this is the first section, and I can go down to fire hazards if that would be helpful.
Somewhere we referenced AB 747 study,
Correct, the evacuation plan.
evacuation plan. Okay, when is that expected to complete?
I think it should be completed by September or so, by the end of September. It should-
And that's when it'll come to the council.
That's when it'll come together as a package with the draft of the health and safety.
Yeah, it will be part of the overall.
Okay.
Because whatever gets studied in that evacuation study, that may result in policies that would be in the draft housing, draft.
So somewhere there was, I forget which slide exactly, but there was some, ensure adequate response times for emergency services, the last line. What are the standards that are currently set up? I mean, what is adequate?
So Commissioner, get to that fire report and the sheriff report, that's part of their data.
Okay. And I think there was a similar thing about the next on the fire housing. It's just, there was something else. There were a couple of places where they said, the response times,
So if I may, response times are kind of dictated by the fire department and the sheriff, when they establish their response times. And I will. Chief Estrada wants to speak to that
Sure,
for fire.
absolutely. It's actually a really good question. One of the things that a lot of people wonder is like, what is the standard? So it's really, when it comes down to it, the standard is based on the density of the population, given the number of people that they, or the number of firefighters per thousand usually. So there are a few standards that are used as benchmark or baselines. They're NFPA standards. But for the fire response, you'll find that in our standards of cover document. You can find that on our website. Here, we actually break it down into where you are, and so those are actually in our reports. For example, if you're urban, and you have a higher density per like square mile, you'll have a different response time because you usually have more fire stations throughout. And what we're really paying attention to is what is the effect? Or what's the delta before and after a specific event? And that event would either be development, it could be over time, when we try to measure what the impact is. So that's the paying attention to what type of potential impact a given project or some other occurrence may have on our ability to maintain what is currently being provided. So you'll see that in our average response times. That's the metric that you have been provided in the past, and that's that in order to provide continuity, that's the one you'll continue to see. So you'd be looking for a change in these reports that come out, and these public safety reports come out through all of our served jurisdictions are available. Actually, they're available here, our agendas. They're also available for us. So the other piece is that it really does depend on, once again, policy, the decisions that are being made, the resources that are allocated, and how the public safety solutions are constructed for a given jurisdiction. So you will see that ours are usually referenced in the summaries in terms of the travel times. So you'll see for us, for example, for anything under 5 minutes of travel time, essentially in comparison. Fire agencies in Santa Clara County or throughout the states is a pretty good time because 5, 6, some use even 7 minutes. It just depends.
I think like two more just to understand anything. One is what is the stars that we are not. Alma?
Those are policies that relate to the new one. So there are policies that address, yeah,
In this new section, there are only one star.
right, so that's the only one that relates to development, residential development, basically. It's talking about development type action, construction. Construction type.
Oh, there are other slides, I saw a lot of stars, so they're all related to development.
Correct.
Okay.
Jacqueline, could you correct me if I'm wrong?
Yeah, it would be existing redevelopment and new development.
So it depends, just talks about when there's construction.
So, something like related to the new construction.
Right.
Any other question?
Well,
Very well.
And just the last question I have on this report. So this one was this question that the study that, this policy one, right, that came from it, study. Policy ones, right? So,
Place
or place works, right? So place works has, there are Cupertino specific knowledge they have or any expertise they have, for example, or they are studying, or this is based on the general understanding of the different environmental policies recommending on this.
They've worked very closely with staff, and I can say they're one of the consultants who does a lot of our environmental reviews. They had prepared our housing element. I would say their staff is extremely familiar.
The city, right? For example, this question that, Commissioner Bailey was saying that the evacuation route, very specific road, very specific corner of the city. So, I hope that they have considered.
yeah, so they're not working in a vacuum, they are working with staff, yeah.
Yeah, this is the transportation consultant working on the evacuation center. It's also, I would say, equally familiar.
Yeah, actually, so just to ask that, understand.
Oh, it's a good question. You definitely want to city, the roadways and the issues related to that.
Yeah, because you can see a lot of comments are very specific, right?
Yes.
That part of the house, that part of the street, that part of the home.
Very good.
And through the chair, just a reminder, we do have to open public comment. I do not have speaker cards, if anyone would like to speak on this topic. Going out after. All right, and no public comment.
So, we can move to the next. Thank Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So our next agenda is the public safety subcommittee update. This is an update for the public safety subcommittee.
Yes. So I'll make a totally here. I have done very little work on that. I had some personal issues that took up my time, so haven't been able to focus on it all, but I do believe that it is an important enough update and it's something we need to pursue further, so I'm perfectly willing to focus on it going forward. So I would require a little bit more time for it, but unfortunate circumstances that it's like, so I was kind of distracted personally.
We could connect at all or is that?
I think we connected once, but I did not connect with the public at all, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess like, yeah, I was able to like do some research and I have some findings, I guess.
That
Has like a OneDrive file, should I like share my screen or
Sure.
send it over?
Do you have a
Or I can like, can I like share it with you?
Yeah. The next year.
Got it.
If you could send it.
Okay.
Or send it over. Yeah, yeah, so I guess maybe just to give some like context, since we did meet 2 months ago, I think one of the things that we were exploring, especially in light of things like ALPR coming online and like just general safety concerns was, there were like quite a few things that I think we wanted to explore, but then we kind of just that maybe one nice place to start would be to figure out like what's needed of the city and its citizens, at least in the eyes of the sheriff's department. And by no means is this like a exhaustive search. I want to say this is like maybe a like 2-hop breadth first search. But anyways, yeah, we can probably go to the next slide. So I guess the first slide over here is basically some findings and learnings that I got from doing a ride along like earlier in the year. So kind of just like distilled all my notes and stuff into a little slide here. So first of all, shout out to Deputy Justin Christian, who I did the ride along with. Super awesome dude, and actually a World Series champion, although he never mentioned that. Yeah. So the first thing that I noticed, like literally from the start, is that ALPR is like an extremely high frequency like help item in the sense that the amount of like hits that keep coming or the hits that were coming up on it on their computer screen in the car, like they were coming in like super frequently. But the key thing to notice is that these were all like non-Cupertino cameras. So that immediately kind of was telling me like, okay, if we're getting that many hits from places that are non-Cupertino, then there's probably like a good amount of hits that would be coming from Cupertino during this time when it wasn't fully online. So that was like kind of a thing that I noticed. Another thing that kind of came up, and I was also asking Deputy Christian, like, like I guess like what do you think is like something that you would I guess like what do you think are things that are like worthy challenges within the department and stuff like that? And he was saying like always trying to work on like retention, because like the people who are at the sheriff's department are extremely talented, like has so much institutional knowledge. So like really figuring out how to kind of maintain the group for the long haul, I think is something that he said was something that sometimes takes a lot of work. And then kind of he was also kind of telling me that like in the long run, and this is not a Cupertino specific problem per se, but this is more of like a county-wide issue is the sense that I got, which is that like low staffing, like inevitably, right? It's like even if the folks who are on the force are becoming more efficient and more productive and being able to do more things, inevitably low staffing leads to sacrifices, right? So sacrifices on the part of time of officers and eventually and maybe more dangerously standards, which is not only a risk for the citizens, but it's also a risk for our law enforcement professionals too. And another thing that was also interesting is like to those same points, I noticed that, or I heard that like recruiting is like always a top priority, trying to find the right people with the right mentality. So in fact, like when we were on the ride along, like this is a bit of anecdotal evidence, like when we were on the ride along, there was like a totally random person, like a bystander who basically like came up to Deputy Christian, was like, oh, like I've been thinking about joining. I've been thinking about like doing the academy. But like how do I get started? Like I wasn't sure like how to actually get started, which is why I like, work my current job. So that I think also kind of hinted at maybe a kind of a deeper issue, which is like maybe there's not enough outreach or like popularization of the pathways that people can take to join law enforcement and make it a career. And I guess that being said, we can maybe go to the next slide. Or I guess these slides are just kind of like compilation of observation stuff, and in the end we'll kind of have like some key maybe potential action items. So yeah, I also spoke with Sergeant Russell Davis, and he was also very helpful and kind enough to share his thoughts. So he kind of mentioned three main things. So the first thing he mentioned was that the process of hiring is a bit of a bottleneck in the sense that, like, yes, a lot of diligence is required to make sure that candidates are mentally, physically, and like just generally fit for the role of doing something this important. But again, the time from like application submission to becoming a deputy can and sometimes take almost like a year, which yes, like even though it makes sense on some level why it takes that long, like it's also might just not be competitive to certain applicants, right? Like they might really just end up doing something else because the job comes faster. So that was just something to think about. The other thing is that like procurement is quite slow, and I think we have like a kind of a signature example of this in the form of the ALPR, right? So it's like similar to hiring. It's like yes, like to a degree, it's all happening for a reason. We need to get county approval, city approval, make sure it's in line with the various laws and stuff. But like slow is still slow. And like ultimately, these tools that are needed and are being recommended to us by law enforcement, like they have this habit of actually proving their worth pretty quickly. Like in fact, Sergeant Davis was saying that literally like one of the first or the first, maybe Captain Valenzuela can detail this more, is he was saying that apparently like yesterday there was a success story where like the Cupertino ALPR like caught a stolen car. And it's like, if the frequency of benefit is so high, but the time it takes to even put it online is a long time, then maybe that process requires a second look, or a deeper look to figure out how to make that faster, because that's something our law enforcement professionals are indicating is a bit of a bottleneck. So we can go to the next slide. And so this slide, I gave it its own dedicated slide actually, because I heard it in multiple conversations, which is that staffing is kind of this like overhang, like it's a bit of a lingering concern. So in Cupertino, however, because it's a contract city, it's not like a huge concern in the sense that there are always going to be like minimum patrols maintained, but obviously everybody agrees that, you know, having one more eye on the lookout can help. But overall, like, how does low staffing or tough staffing actually impact the community? It actually ends up impacting things that are not like the top of mind things like patrol. So for example, like there was this anecdote about how for a brief period of time, like a lot of officers were on mandatory overtime because there was apparently a shortage for officers to do like the court functions. Like for instance, like I think the way it works is like when a judge, I guess, like says like, okay, like we're gonna have like a court session, there needs to be like a deputy like on station to like do this. But there'd be no deputy, so they'd have to like wait for someone to presumably leave their station and come over here. So anyways, these things all kind of combine to somehow affect the efficiency of law enforcement and the benefits potentially to all of us as citizens in the community. And I guess in terms of like theories or hypotheses for maybe why staffing might be tough, the last bullet point about how like, yeah, it's still there's a bit of a challenge to find the right candidates because of things like, you know, maybe the right people don't know about things like the academy and about the profession, how rewarding the profession is. And also to that point, like the things we mentioned about like the hiring process and stuff, and like how it might be competitive or uncompetitive against maybe other careers and stuff. But perhaps maybe the most common thing that was heard is just like in general, the kind of the scrutiny or like the popularity of the profession is something that weighs on people in the department. And so I guess that's something that might trickle down to like someone who's like a high schooler and deciding what profession they want to do. They might be, you know, heavily biased or affected by, you know, the thought of like being scrutinized and stuff like that. So I think maybe go into like the final slide actually, which is basically like what can we as a city actually do to address these things. So I think overall, out of all those slides, all these findings and stuff, there's really like two main areas that I think are the discernible bottlenecks. One is procurement, like how long it takes to procure tools and things that are actually productive and useful for the city and for sheriff's department. And then the second is, of course, trying to alleviate the staffing concern and alleviate the popularity slash scrutiny concern. So I think like if there's a way we can maybe look into how to streamline these procurement processes to make sure that the next ALPR thing doesn't take, you know, a long time to implement and bring online, that would be, I think, extremely net positive, even though it's like a kind of a small thing. And then, yeah, figuring out how we can better promote law enforcement careers and, you know, show and tell to the youth of Cupertino that it's like an extremely viable and rewarding and you know, great career basically. So yeah, figuring out something in those two bullet points, I think is something that we can maybe work on or figure out how to do. So yeah, that's the end of this presentation. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Gajaran, for the presentation. So I have like a question from comments and statement. So, so this is great, you know, that you visiting some of the real pain and the first hand experience, and looking at the side from the response side, right, from the public safety, especially from the, especially from the sheriff department, right, that they are side of the pain and what is the practical problem they're facing, right? You also consider some of the resident side of the things, and anyone who reached out or anything as part of this input you incorporated. Just because the last bit time we were discussing heavily on that side also.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for the purpose of this, I only focused on
Focus
the
on the-
singular
yeah,
task
yeah.
of this
Single
one.
singular
Yes.
task.
I do have, since I still have the action item. So the part that I wanted to focus on and didn't get around to was basically to document the whole process of what happens when a case is filed. That's something I need to kind of follow up with the department and understand. First, it's like, so person files the case, then something happens. It's a black box for us, so I need to figure that out. And then the second thing is trying to maybe understand what the city neighborhood watch program would actually do, or it's like we all have the signs, and what happens after that? If you have the neighborhood watch, maybe it'll be useful to get like so for the first objective, which is really just understanding the case, what I was thinking was that, what do we see as the main duties sort of that happen at the sheriff's department, just for us to understand, because a lot of people, and my neighbors included, who have been burglarized have often got this thing of, yeah, it's difficult for us to catch it, we're looking at it. So there's clearly a bottleneck besides, maybe it ties into what he was talking about of not enough staffing, but it comes down to after the case is filed and somebody does a research on it or whatever, what happens then? Because the property is never recovered, very rarely recovered. Nobody's held responsible and it keeps happening. So what is just understanding the process itself after, and then understanding the bottlenecks that it's not to place blame, but just to understand the process of what it entails after a case is filed. What is that process and what happens after? And why and how, or at least to begin with, how many are outstanding cases, as in, there were 5 burglaries or 3 burglaries that happened, and what was solved?
So if I may add, so we have received the action items tracker from Martha last time. It has probably around 20% clearances on the burglaries from 2020 to 2023,
Yes.
Roughly. So are we going to go through that action items tracker one by one and see what are the updates?
No, those will be getting as a part of the sheriff's update, right?
Yeah.
So this particular item
This was more of a documentation of what the process was rather than just the details.
Yeah. I think
Yes.
the outcome of this particular study was that we from the subcommittee we gave some clear recommendation, and that recommendation we can implement and we can help. So there are 2 areas that I am hearing, and this is very in line with what we discussed in the last meeting also. That is, one part is how we can enable our sheriff department and the pains and the bottlenecks there, make them more effective. Sheriff department is basically Commissioner Balaram is saying, they're helping them, volunteering, the campaigning to get the recruitment tools, more effective tools and things like that, right? And but we have to be very specific how we can help, so that can be our study recommendation. Cannot be very broad here, because we need a study, we have to be very specific. But maybe can some of the back office work, like can the city, senior citizens, qualified senior citizen do the back office work? Can, So, some of the campaign we can do in the high school, or we can say out of state recruitment, right? Can we recommend that, the salary gap incentive or the bonus incentive? We have to do some specific recommendation. That's one part of it. So we can do. Second part is what Commissioner Begul is saying is that, the understanding when this incident happens, what exactly the workflow for that and what happens and how it gets handled overall. And we talked about that in length in the last meeting on this one, and we know that there probably is all information cannot be shared as not shareable in this thing, but at least we need an understanding of that. That can be taken as a part of this thing also, so that can be little more transparently shared with the commission as well as public also. Look, this is the happening study, and this is how it happens. This is how it happens. That will raise at least some of the concern, alleviate some of the concern, even if they're not real, but the perception will be a little bit handled from the public and the resident perception, because that is coming very, very strongly in hard train. And the last part also neighborhood watch program, and we talked about that in the last meeting also. That neighborhood program, watch program, and the block leader program also in that context we discussed how more effectively we can use it. Now, in the last meeting, there was a neighborhood watch program presentation. Kind of know basically what it does and what are the elements to it. Today, there is a presentation on the block leader program, right? So maybe I will say that maybe we extend this study little more. Maybe we take 1 more month to it, and then you come back. The very specific recommendation with this 4 agenda. One is basically the tooling and the instrumentation for the sheriff's department. Second thing is basically how we can alleviate how we can help sheriff's department in the recruitment, campaigning, back office work, and anything wherever we can do that. Third thing, the case follow-up and the outcome, better understanding. It's more of communication and understanding with some examples, specific examples. And the fourth is basically how effectively we can use, more effectively we can use the neighborhood watch program. Okay, so but we need a very specific recommendation on that. Maybe if we come back with that recommendation, maybe if we all agree, we can extend this another month, and then both work on this and just come back with this 4 elements. Then basically we are covering all the corners that the main concerns, and resident side as well as the sheriff side, both sides are covering, and some specific recommendation we are getting. Because I'm getting the similar concern, similar discussion is coming. So let's get some specific recommendation, and I think Commissioner Rajaram already got some great ideas. Be more specific and come back maybe in 4 weeks or maybe a month we can do that. So, fair?
Yes.
Or maybe, yeah, maybe I was thinking like, maybe the best way to do it is like, since there are like 4 items and there are 4 of us, like maybe like each one of us like focuses deeply on like one of those 4 things and then just comes back with like 1 or 2 specific like policy ideas or like
Yeah.
things that.
Yeah, these are the 4.
Yeah.
They are the 4 corners. Yeah, somehow I'm okay with that. I mean, you distribute the loads and all these things, but I think.
Or I think it's like more than distributed load. It's like, I think there's like good value in just having like one person focusing on
To
one thing.
focus on the
Yeah.
focused area on this one, right?
So like, I guess like, for example, or is this part of like future agenda setting? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But
we can discuss in the future.
Yeah.
Let's first close it, then we can make it as take it to the future agenda, how we handle
All
that,
right,
right? So
yeah.
let's first agree on that. Like, I think the 4 areas, are we agreeing these 4 areas? One is basically being on the instrumentation for the sheriff department. Second part is the recruitment and giving them how we can help them more, right, to take some offload. And then the case follow-up and stuff, that is one aspect of it, and the neighborhood watch program. These are the 4 sides, right? So maybe we just pick these 4 things, and then I'm okay to discuss it and maybe extend this. I know that sharing and get the first recommendation on this, and take some more time and get very specific. Come back with a real concrete recommendation. So that will be more meaningful and impactful.
Okay.
Commissioner, Ravi?
Yeah, hello. Let's move with it.
Yeah, all that, right? Then let's set it up in the future agenda that we can take it and we can say that, okay, for this, the purpose of this subcom, I think we got a idea and this is a progress has been made. And but I believe that, what we are seeing that we need little more time and more work to finish it. And we'll extend it, for a little more time. Is that okay? Does it make sense, right? That's perfect. Right?
And would you like to open up to public comment now?
Yes, we can have some, public comment. I know that there are public interest on this issue, so yes, we should.
All right, so just a reminder, if you'd like to comment on this item, you can fill out a speaker card and hand that in. You will have 3 minutes, so welcome, Sonali.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair, for doing this, and I remember last time I was here when we decided to do the subcommittee. So, happy that you are going to go forward and do some more things with it. Since Captain is here, I got some interesting update on my case. So my home was burglarized in March on a Saturday. And people came home, like 2 deputies came home and they took everything. Nothing happened till Wednesday or Thursday. Like I went and gave my stuff and I want to know why there is so much delay, number one. And then number two is there is no feedback. And I am fortunate that the deputy or detective who was assigned to my case, he actually called me last month and told me what is going on. But 99% of the time, all the people who are in my neighborhood and are burglarized, they don't have any update. They don't know. And the person who had come here, although even their house was burglarized and nothing happened, right? So, and you are doing good work. So I think what we need to understand is what is happening with the cases, right? Like, for example, if I'm on a project, I have different steps in my project, right? I'm a software person. So then we have something like, okay, these are being looked at. And then now 3 months have passed and nothing has happened. So the only thing what I found, and it is very discouraging, is and a lot of people have the same opinion. I'm very motivated, so I'm coming to these meetings. A lot of people are very busy and they are not coming. But the sentiment is the police department, I'm very sorry to say this, but they have already given up. Like they don't want to go ahead and even look at stuff. Lot of people, like some of the cops who had come to my neighbor's house, told her just file insurance claim. I mean, I understand, but then how are you going to pay for the emotional loss that we are feeling, right? People, when I go inside my house, I still feel, oh, am I going to see the same thing that I saw? Kids are at home. If my son was at home, the person came, knocked on the door, nobody was there, thank God, right? But if he was in the bathroom, he wouldn't have heard. And so such things have happened in the past. So the update on my case is basically that the Union City people, Union City cops, the detective had sent images recovered from my ring to everywhere, and the Union City cops actually found the series of robbery, and they there are like 5 places they had found. The guy who was caught, he is in Arizona, and he's detained as for illegal status. He's from Colombia, I think. So that guy is there, but they cannot. Is it 3 minutes or okay? All right. So I was wondering why Union City.
That is the end of your time. So. Is any other requests?
Do you want me to fill the form? I'll let you hear.
Okay, thank you. And then before we move on, do we have any final comments from the commission?
So I have a comment. Are we going to go through the action items that you sent us in an email, Martha? So for example, how many cases were solved in 2023? You sent us an email in the action items update. Is it going to be part of one of the presentations?
No, those action items in the email as information.
So can we go through the action items?
Yeah, those were basically, I believe that last time we asked for that report, I think that was shared.
So what is the use of having an action items if they're not going through those action items, and updating the action? Items?
The chair, sorry, this is not agenda.
Okay.
So if we could please just keep it to the subcommittee.
Okay.
That it's, that report is shared.
And
Okay.
As a reminder, the text of the motion to create the subcommittee was motion to create a public safety subcommittee for the purpose of investigating the needs of the sheriff's office and examining bottlenecks. So if we could keep discussion of future subcommittee actions within what was voted on in this one.
Yes. So yeah, so then in that case, this particular, there's no more public comment, right? Only one, okay. So in that case, we, this particular topic, we can, assume to be, close discussion for today, and we'll take some more action at the next meeting. The future meeting.
Okay, we'll get to that in future agenda session.
The future agenda. Alright. So the next part is the block leader program.
Okay, so the block leader program slide. This map is available on the city website. It is a basic heat map of where we have block leaders. You will notice there are more block leaders where there tend to be more people. You can zoom in on this map to try and see if there's a block leader near you. Obviously, to respect everyone's privacy, we do not publish block leaders' actual addresses. So as part of this map, there is a place, where you can see if there is a block leader, but this is generally the coverage in the city. So this is our kind of underlying ethos for the program. Originally, the program was created in 2001, post 9/11. From a sense that there was difficulty in feeling the sense of community post the terrorism. Originally, the program was in Parks and Recreation. At one point, it was considered to move to the communications team. In 2020, it was incorporated into the Office of Emergency Management. At the time, was City Manager's Office and is now Parks and Recreation. Okay, so there are 3 requirements for block leaders to remain part of the program. Those requirements, we've tried to keep them relevant to the program goals, but also not incredibly burdensome to the volunteers. To join the program, we ask that potential volunteers be current Cupertino residents, that they are willing to partner with the local government and the city and act as an information relay both ways. And that as a citizen or as a city program, participants remain non-political and non-partisan when acting as a Cupertino block leader. There is a one-time orientation. People are welcome to come back if they would like a review, but it's about 45 minutes. There was one scheduled for May. Unfortunately, that was canceled due to low attendance. And there was another scheduled for June. Unfortunately, no one showed up. Right, so the first requirement is to have a yearly community event. Originally, the requirement was to have a permitted block party, but that did not really work with people's particular communities. In some places, it's not really possible. So if you're living on Rainbow, it's not really practical to shut down Rainbow on one block. So we expanded that out to anything where the neighbors get to know their block leader and each other. And I specify that last part because at one point, someone had said, yes, I had a neighborhood event. I went door to door to each person. The goal of the community events is to build that sense of community. So it's not just one way, but picturing sort of a web or a net. We also encourage block leaders to work together on these events. So this particular National Night Out event was actually co-hosted by 3 different block leaders that were all working together, just because one had more time at this point and another had more time at this point, so it's just easier for them to work together. We have fire come to block parties, we have sheriff's office come to block parties. I go to a lot of block parties because we know that for a lot of people, when they're putting out the invitation, they want to have a draw. So it could be, hey, come listen to the sheriff's office give a neighborhood watch. Or someone from the city is going to do a build a kit exercise with us. Other block leaders have done toy drives right around the holidays. Some meet at coffee shops. It is anything that the block leader feels is one, within their capabilities to do, and two, works with their community. And like I said, it's required because it is the most effective way to build that sense of community. The second requirement is to attend at least one program meeting. These are held quarterly. This year, unfortunately, we're only having 3. The January meeting had to be canceled because I had pneumonia. And didn't want to give a bunch of block leaders pneumonia. Past presentation topics included a presentation from the Fire Safe Council, a representative from the building department to discuss building permits and building inspections. We had our city website applications team discuss the new website, and someone from sustainability to come and discuss home electrification. So the goal with these program meetings is to give block leaders information about things that are happening in the city, happening in the area, so that they can be a resource for their neighbors. As a person to come to of, hey, I heard the city was doing XYZ, or the other way, pushing that information out of, hey, I know you next door neighbor are remodeling your home. I just heard from the building department that XYZ. The final requirement is participation in the REACH goal, or in the REACH program. REACH is short for Raising Emergency Awareness of Community Hazards. The way this works is that when the National Weather Service pushes out an alert reaching a certain level of risk, I will then create a sort of modified situation status report that goes out to all of the OEM volunteers. So that's block leaders, neighborhood watch, CERT, CARES, and MRC. And we ask them, we ask all the volunteers to please pass that information to their neighbors, to their community in the way that best works for them. You'll hear me say what best works for the block leader a lot, because what I might think is the best way to communicate is not necessarily the best way for each different block leader to communicate. When I send out alerts to friends and family about hot weather, I usually send it in a text. We have one block leader who will physically print out the information, such as where sandbags can be picked up when there are flooding events. And she prints it out and puts it up in the community space in her building, because that's what works best for her. We also know part of the reason we have this is not everyone is signed up for Alert SEC. Not everyone is following the city on Twitter and Instagram, sorry, X and Instagram. So we want to meet people where they're at, and the block leaders, neighborhood watch, all of our volunteer programs are able to do that much more easily than the city can. Right. So, there have been some changes since 2022. That date is significant. That's when I was brought on. There was a gap between, the former program coordinator and myself. So there was the move to the Office of Emergency Management. With that move came a new focus on resilience and preparedness. We're still looking at building a sense of community for the sake of having community. But, you know, in Office of Emergency Management, we're always kind of thinking about resilience, preparedness, response. Another change was the introduction of multiple block leaders in the neighborhood. Before, there was only one allowed block leader in their area. And so in order to make it a little bit easier, and based on feedback from block leaders, that you can have as many co-leaders as you want. We also have the block party grant, so that's up to $300 per year per neighborhood. That is linked to a permitted block party. As opposed to any other community event. We also, you know, as the whole city has had budget decreases, we also had budget decreases and the creation and implementation of the REACH program. I will say in 2024, there were 143 registered block leaders, 33 satisfied all 3 requirements. So. On June 23rd, we had a volunteer feedback meeting. As part of that, we also had a survey that closes tomorrow. So next week and going forward, I'll be looking at the responses from that. And implementing changes. One changes that we have already made is we are doing a block leader directory that people can opt into. So far, I believe we had 30 signups to join that already. I'll give it a couple more weeks and then that will go to block leaders, not to the general public, so that block leaders can communicate with each other in the methods that they say that they are comfortable with. Right. And if we have any commissioner questions?
Okay. So I heard that some of these meetings you are having low attendance or no attendance, right? Are those meetings are all in-person meetings? Can those be extended as hybrid meetings?
So one change that we made was that, we're having one program meeting a year be virtual. So this past, May meeting, which was the, Fire Safe Council presentation, that was held virtually.
But not all the meetings can be conducted both in person and
No,
online
because
as well?
part of the meetings is to give block leaders the opportunity to meet each other. Which is a little bit more difficult in a virtual setting.
How many total active block leaders are here right now in the city? How many total?
140,
How many?
143.
100. First in about 33 are all active. Blocks.
It's that satisfied all 3 requirements.
So the feedback you said the 7/11 is the last date. Is it specific to the block leaders or even public safety commissioners also can give it?
It's for volunteers.
Only for volunteers.
Volunteer programs.
And the communication mechanism you said that depends on the block to block, it depends, somebody can use text message, somebody email, whatever way that block works, right?
Yep, whatever works best for them.
And make the neighbors participate in the block program. So basically, somebody volunteer to do block, so they need to go to their neighborhood and, you know, have the residents to participate into the
Yes.
program. And if not, if everyone does not participate, that's okay, or it has to be everyone.
So what we found is generally it takes most people 2 to 3 times before they start opening the door. Just because a lot of times you hear a knock and you think it's someone selling something. So it does take time and effort. I have not heard from a single block. No one joined the block group. But best practice is generally to start with the folks on either side of you and maybe across the street and grow from there.
And it doesn't restrict like how many streets or how many houses like that, right?
No, it is what the block leader is comfortable with.
And then, and if someone is opts out, that's okay also.
Yes.
I clearly see that this can be at least used for some of the communication, emergency response and other things and awareness. Getting city program, people may not know a lot of city programs or the city tools or the information, so it's can be used for each other.
You have put up a little map saying that shows the blocks that have block leaders. Can you put that up?
Not necessarily the exact blocks that have block leaders, but where generally block leaders are.
And where is that on the website?
That should be on the block leader page. I will double check with the, so I think it's still there.
This just gives you how many block leaders, but does it, so the circle, the diameter of the circle is the block?
No, that's how many block leaders are in that radius. So you can zoom in to about a half mile. No, sorry, a quarter mile. But we don't have it go all the way down to the street level just because we don't want to accidentally, have a pin that says this is where the block leader lives, right? So it's kept a little bit vague. There is a place on that map for then a resident to reach out to me and request to be put in contact with their block leader, if there is.
You said that which year city started this program?
2001.
2001. And you say there is a budget also for meeting, and let's say some blocks decides to do a coffee event or something like that. How does it-
So there's the block party grant is limited to block parties that have been permitted by the city. That was on the advisement of the city attorney's office due to liability. But yes, there is money available for community events.
So if some block, you said that they can have a meeting with some coffee shop or some park,
Yes.
and the block leader has to go and get the money and spend it. And
Okay, so the block party grant is for a permanent block party, so shutting down the street and having,
oh, so that kind of party, so it's coming to the street and do that, okay.
yes.
But if you do,
If you meet at a coffee shop, then that is,
that's not considered a block party.
it is not considered a permitted block party. But it is considered a community event.
And in those events, those not permanent, block party or the events. The block leader can invite sheriff department or someone to, talk about something or, raise some confidence on the safety, security, awareness, they can do that.
So for some blocks, the way that they start is with a neighborhood watch presentation.
Yeah.
So that's their community event for the year. There is one neighborhood that I know of that asks someone from the transportation department to come in because they have questions about speed limits. So what happens is a block leader will reach out to me, say, I want to have an event on this date at this place. Can someone from the sheriff's office come? Can someone from fire? Someone from sustainability, anything like that, can they come? We do need those requests at least a month in advance, just to make sure that we can get that request out and answered in time. This is also the case for National Night Out, but when someone from the sheriff's office, someone from fire goes, they are still on duty at the time of that visit. So, there is always the possibility that they have to leave early or may not be able to attend at all if there is a call that they have to answer.
That makes sense. And this, So you have some regular meetings with the block leaders?
Yes.
And that gets cancelled, right? Or it
No. The quarterly meetings are held. The orientation is the last two working.
Of orientation, because there was no new block leader.
There were new block leaders, but the first, no one was able to attend that particular day or time. The second, there were RSVPs, but they were all no shows. So
From Public Safety Commission, we go and let's say our subcommittee decides that, okay, we want to, use block leader help,
So that would have to be a different subcommittee. Because the current subcommittee has its narrow focus. So if you wanted to have a subcommittee focused on the block leader program, that would have to be a new
So
sub.
why? As a pilot subcommittee, it was the general safety and recommendation, right? Public safety recommendation. Why to be separate?
Because the current subcommittee is investigating the needs of the sheriff's office and examining bottleneck.
So this can be a need, right? Because the public reach out. I mean,
But then if you have, well, the balance is separate or something. At this point, you're gonna come back and say, this is the need. That's what.
let's see what is the recommendation comes. Okay, I just want to see that how we can use, any public reach out,
And then we have to
For
go back
the
to the next step.
that can be an extra.
Because that closes.
Any other comment on this?
So Chair, would you like to open to public comment?
Yes, please.
Do we have any requests for public comment?
We don't have any speaker cards, and if you'd like to speak on this item. Right? No problem.
So if we could have any final comments from commissioners?
I move that we take a recess until 8 p.m.
Why don't we just? Why don't we just
What?
finish the board meeting?
No, we have.
There's a lot more topics.
We have more topics, the fire department and the sheriff's office. Okay, well, yeah.
Anyone seconding?
Yeah.
Sorry, do we have any final comments on the item of the block leader program?
No, I think.
Okay.
So,
We can close the item and move to the next agenda item.
so before the next agenda, I think Commissioner Rabi is saying that to take a break.
Yeah, I move that we recess until 8 p.m. Just 4 minutes, 5 minutes.
The chair can go ahead and call a break.
Yeah, we can connect.
A 5-minute break?
5 minutes break.
Okay. We'll come back at 8 o'clock.
Thank you. Give us 1 minute, Sheriff. So next topic is basically monthly update report from the fire department of the district office. So let's start with the fire district, fire marshal report first.
Okay. Good evening. Actually, give you the update, we're gonna be updating for May. So the cover sheet basically has, there was one incident that was listed as a or that was actually had some property value, or property loss from a fire, although there were no incidents that we would say have big enough impact to be called a significant incident. This was a structure fire that was effectively hot on the stove. A pretty routine thing, but they do actually cause property damage. So one of the things that just to be aware of is just about anything that gets to that point where it requires a response and it's a fire category, there's usually some damage. So one of the things that maybe I'll put together for later is the different types of typical things you might see. So even though they're not significant, they do have an impact. May affect the person, their ability to cook or something for a few days, or it might actually impact them with a several $1,000s worth of actual repairs. So even the things that don't register as a big deal could still have they could still be a big deal on the small scale. So,
This was an incident that occurred, can you describe it? And not the location.
sure. So basically, as the incident report in the narrative just described it as there was a report of a structure fire. It came in from a 911 call. It's usually it was reported as something in the kitchen and that it was near the stove. The units that went on scene arrived. They found that it was pot on the stove. It did not indicate who corrected the problem. Sometimes those things are left, so the firefighters will get there, turn and or cover it. This one did not flash and create natural flame that would sustain, but it does scare folks a lot, and usually gets them to evacuate the building house. So this one had it seemed like it was pretty small scale. Like I said, it didn't extend into the vent or the hood, or the cabinetry around. There was no indication of this on the cabinets or the paint on the walls. So it probably was a flash. But to the extent of what was documented in the event and how many units, tell that it's essentially was something that happened very quickly, was abated very quickly, and then was basically more of a recovery and cleanup.
Nice. That's why it became,
I'm sorry.
that's why it became significant in it.
Actually, it wasn't indicated as a significant event, but I saw it. And I thought that it would be a good opportunity to say that even though it doesn't register as a significant event, and we would typically call that something, maybe with $5,000 to $10,000 or some other kind of impact, we would say that was something that was noteworthy. But nothing registered this month for the report, but I just saw it as a moment, as an opportunity to talk about even small things potentially having an impact. Maybe provide some public education in the future in the fall. So with that, we can go to the report. The number of incidents per year. So this is a running average over the last year for the number of incidents. Really at this point last year, you can see in the year for the last 5. Our numbers, and there's typically this little dip right around now where it's the numbers are still about where we would expect them to be because, like I said, we got back to our pre-COVID numbers. And so with that, really more a function of weather, the conditions or other things that might be going on with it. Hasn't been super hot, so you may not have a whole lot of heat events. Those are things that last year was hotter. If you're wondering why this year it seems lower, those are the types of things that anecdotally that could affect or drive a number of our call volume. The number of incidents by month. This is a 36-month average, and I will say that really all it shows is the ebb and the flow of how things roll. If you take a look at every November, for example, you'll see some kind of similarity, but not a whole lot. So I'll be honest with you. I'm going to go back and ask him a little bit more about this particular graph, because I think that other than saying there is essentially this ceiling and there is this floor. So we can always expect that we will be somewhere within that range. So as a range. The next bar chart you see is really the also a 36-month average for the time of day. This once again tracks to when people are going to work, when they're getting on the roads, and then when they're getting home. You'll see that rise and then that dip. One of the other things that's baked in here is the number of calls, sometimes more than one unit. So if the number of incidents is really more a function of how many units are on rolling, and so those bigger events would actually indicate that, or they would push the numbers up. And then the incidents by type. This one actually is pretty typical for us. These numbers are for Cupertino, so 100% equals the 353 that you see in the total of that. The number of incidents for fire type events, 14. So that would include, just like the event that I described earlier, anything that was basically when they call 911 and they say fire or smoke, it'll come in as a fire response. They will further classify it if it turns out to be just smoke that was lingering in the area or a report on conditions, then that would end up changing the actual designation and what it was. So these are events or incidents that had some kind of smoker or at least fire some size. But none of them really rose to the level where they were considered a working structure fire.
What is service category?
Service would be pipe broke and your bathroom's flooding. It could be there's a condition or other.
Oh, bathroom flooding was also
It could be a service call. I'm sorry. Or did you ask service? I'm sorry.
Yeah, service.
Yeah. So the service call basically is you're saying, hey, I need help. And it could be, it's just essentially unclassified. So it doesn't fall into an EMS. It doesn't fall into a hazardous condition. It's not a fire. It's just one of those things. So
They don't call a plumber, they call 911.
well, we'll go out and we'll stop whatever it is that's causing the big problem, and that would be the thing like the water's just running. So a plumber wouldn't respond in 4 or 5 minutes to come out and we'll secure it, we'll mitigate whatever it is that's creating the condition. And these would be those things like if it was gas, then it's gas. Yeah, so these would be things like, I think that, if you smelled an odor and you just said, there's something in the neighborhood right now, that would essentially be either a smoke investigation or odor investigation. That would be classified as a service, so it's really essentially us just looking into something for you.
Through the chair, if we could hold clarifying questions until after this.
Sure.
Sorry, I was getting engaged. I like data. So we'll move to the next page. I'm gonna focus on this one for a little bit because this one actually tracks back to the type of things that you were asking. So on the top level for call, where you see, those are fire events. So when we get a 911 call and then the ring down comes in for a fire event, I got smoke in my bathroom or my kitchen's on fire. Those are the types of calls that come in on the fire event, and you'll see. So call processing time is the time that a person initiates the call to the dispatch center. The dispatch center starts taking information in, and that full duration of the time that it actually takes is the time that's indicated here. There's an overlap because at a certain point, they'll make a decision to dispatch the closest unit and the right number of units. So with that, you see there'll be an overlap with the turnout time. So the turnout time is the time that in the firehouse, when the bell hits and they say structure fire at 1, 2, 3, but at that point, that's when the clock starts for the turnout time. And then when the wheels start rolling on the rigs, then at that point, that's where that interval will be. During that time, that's where they'll put on their turnouts, or they'll kind of strip away or even make their way to the rig first. And then there's you have to have all your gear on before you can get in and put on, and you have to be seatbelted in. So one of the big changes from way back when, where you used to just jump on a tailboard. But for us, the turnout time, call processing time could actually overlap. The turnout time is all in the firehouse. And then the total reflex time is that time until we actually have the first unit on scene. And you'll see that we now encounter the urban and the rural. So for the urban, an urban area is basically any neighborhood or area that has more than 1,000 people per square mile. Here in these areas, 100% urban. As you get to the rural areas, just like it sounds, they're further away. So your times are going to be extended, and you'll see the difference here is you have 7:25 and 10:10 coming in for fire calls. For EMS calls, which is once again a majority of what we have, you'll see that the turnout time a little bit shorter. That's because they're not putting on turnouts, but they do have EMS gear they have to put on. So it's kind of a smaller scale, but there's something that has to go up top, something that typically you'll have to have for your foot gear, maybe something that might be for protection for a respiratory potential risk on a call. So those types of things have to be donned and then in the rigging mode. So and then you'll see that the actual urban and rural reflex times are typically a little bit faster than EMS. And that's part of it is because it's cumulative. So you'll see that time where the call processing time, the call gets dispatched. It's easier to say, I have a headache, or I have chest pain. Those dispatches happen very, very quickly. And so we're rolling in that overlap of time. And this is essentially what we would call the response time continuum. There are different segments of it. If you were paying attention to what it is, like if you wanted to understand better, what kind of impact is a project having in an area, or how are the response times affected? These are the metrics to look for, because you can tell that was it the crews, was it call processing, or was it their ability to travel from A to B? You can also take into account when a crew arrives somewhere, if they actually, how long does it take them to get to the patient? So there are a lot of different metrics that you can actually use in order to measure. Some of them are very relevant for this area, especially when you're taking into consideration construction projects or festivals or other types of things. But for us, that's how to best understand it. Specific questions that we can get into if you wish. And I'll move on to just by unit. You have in Cupertino, we're pretty lucky. We have 3 primary stations that serve Cupertino. The density here is a lot higher. So engine 71, truck 71 are coming out of the same house. Engine 77, and basically engine 72 and hazmat 72. Those are companies, and you'll see that the number of calls up top, the 1,551, the engines are the primary unit. They will go to most calls and they'll be dispatched because they're the ones that are EMS, fire response. They pretty much do everything. Rescues, anything on the freeways. And below that is the average response time. That was the number that I mentioned. So 4:51 is a pretty fast response time in comparison to a lot. It has a lot to do with the density of fire resources that we have here. And as you can see, the only thing that you don't get out of this report, if you go to the next page, if you look at the call distribution on the map, you'll see that's calls as they paint our area, the location and the proximity to the stations. You'll see that they basically main thoroughfares. You'll have your service calls, which could include wires down or other types of things as well. So this kind of gives you an idea of kind of where it's happening. And then if you look at 79 near the bottom, that would be a company that's not represented on this report, but they do get pulled in. So a structural response will always get multiple engines coming in. So anything coming into like 71's area, it could potentially pull 79, 77, and 72 in. I will take any questions if you wish, and
Sure.
end of report. Sure.
One is very interesting to see that about 83% is Medicare and the others calls, right? But it is happening in the daytime, like 9 to 5. How that, sickness gets increases, the medical call increases during the daytime. I mean, it's I don't know. Yeah.
So the question is the frequency of calls happening during the daytime or the.
Yeah.
It's because we bump into things mostly. We either while you're walking, running, playing, working, or driving. And it's the roads essentially that have a lot to do. So an EMS call, like a vehicle accident is called. Yeah, without a person who we would anybody that couldn't get out of the vehicle themselves would transition that call to a rescue. But for the most part, most vehicles have that condition, and so they stay. They'll stay an EMS call, vehicle accident, which is there are subcategories of EMS, and it is primarily the thing that we see, and it's just because those are the waking hours. People that call at night for EMS are usually pretty sick.
They're pretty sick, yeah. Got it. So these are different kind of, it's not like pretty sick scenario. And the other question I had, the total reflex time, it is basically when the fire department reaches there, is that the reflex time?
Yeah, and so that's actually number 5 for 5C, D, and E are definitions for the actual reflex times.
Sorry, I didn't.
On the first page. Oh, I'm sorry. So on the first page of the actual report, which is in the part of the packet. So it measures the time from initiation of the 911 call to the fire apparatus arriving on scene.
And the one more question I have is the trend for that number that you were showing over there, the reflex or the stuff. What is the trend? Is the trend is going better or it's improving or it is?
Oh, the trends. Well, if you look at the one, the number of incidents by month.
But not this one, but
Oh.
next page, I think next slide. Yeah, here. These numbers are, what is the trend here?
So I've noticed that as I've been reporting out, our numbers are staying pretty consistent. There hasn't been a whole lot of things that have changed in terms of like what it is. Like, so that 451, I haven't seen us. We're hovering below 5 typically. And that number right there, as far as the reflex time, the variable that changes, so the traffic's been about the same. And the call processing time, although there might have been a slight change, it hasn't been a huge change because they have a protocol that they follow. The triggers are pretty well practiced. We did change the CAD system a little bit ago, so you probably see a change that occurred, but that would have made response times a little bit better. And then the turnout time has been fairly consistent. The firefighters typically will don their equipment in about the same amount of time. at the firehouse. So, but it is the one thing that changes the most. It has the most. So if a station were to have some kind of, work being done and there was a different route from, some of the living spaces, that could actually affect the response times a little bit on the turnout. If there's road work being done, if you're gonna go from 71 to Apple campus, you might actually see, because of construction in that path, you might see a slight delay as well. So those are the types of things that would affect response times, but nothing that has affected it to the extent that it's created some kind of concern right now. So
And in your map, there are a lot of dots outside city areas, so we respond to that also.
so we in some areas have an automatic aid, or so if you look south,
Yeah,
those are all part of the fire district. So
oh,
they're actually part of the county fire resources. 3 engines or three stations would not be enough to serve Cupertino. So we,
how does the budget work for city, the city pays for this money or this is county level budget?
so Cupertino was actually part of the fire district, and the funds come through, basically they come through through the district through different means. I'd have to go into the way it's funded is the dollars just come through as part of district funds as opposed to contract funds. So we have, there's a lot of information that's on our actual website, but, it's cumulative resources that allow us to put what we call an effective, response, team together that can go in and actually put out a fire. So it would be, for large grass fires and others. So this is typical in the way that's why when station locations are established, a lot of times they'll take a look at heat maps or some other means of figuring out where the best place for a station to go is. And you would, for example, you see that cluster around 71. Anytime 71 is occupied, somebody from further out has to come in. So that's why we create this grid. What this doesn't show is anybody that we may have an auto aid agreement with. So there are, with San Jose on Rainbow Drive, actually, Station 15, San Jose Station 15. So there's this little pocket that's actually San Jose, and we run into each other's areas all the time because we happen to be the closest dispatch or the closest unit to dispatch. So that's actually part of the dispatch protocols that we use. But I'm not sure if that answered your question, but it's through mutual aid agreements, auto aid agreements, and this cooperation. If it's agency to agency, but within the fire district, we have 19 stations now. Any one of those would be available as a resource if something was going on in Cupertino and they required.
Oh, got it, okay, so this is the shared resource.
Oh, yeah, no, they're all are. Everything in the fire district is potentially available for Cupertino.
The other thing is, the Cupertino has a lot of, hilly, neighborhood and a lot of. So do we have a helicopter and those kind of stuff, to mitigate fire?
So we do not have a helicopter. Cal Fire is the one that actually has that kind of equipment. They have helicopters, dozers, and other things. So I'm not aware of any fire department, municipal or district, that has a helicopter in Santa Clara.
Isn't that a problem for simply?
It's Cal Fire.
So you can reverse that?
Yeah, Cal Fire is so we have a regional, so the mutual aid agreement will pull in Cal Fire at most of the areas, it depends on whether the state responsibility area or an area that we call neutral threat zone isn't, and in the areas that you're talking about, where a helicopter would be an effective resource, those typically trigger Cal Fire anyway, or we can call.
Because I saw 4th July, one of the fire incident in San Ramon happened. I got the video and the report I was reading. Is basically because of the helicopter, they said, basically, the hilly houses, row houses, lot of houses in San Ramon, next to that hilly area and got fired.
Yeah.
And helicopter, fire department came for the helicopter, literally, the helicopter response, they could hit the house. Because there's no car can go in those areas, lot of trail area, and the houses could catch very good.
Yeah, and that's actually how most of those fires are handled. They will incorporate air support. And that is coordinated through the incident commander. And when we need something, we basically call for it.
So we have the access to the resource if we need.
We do, yeah.
And my last question on this thing, the fire hydrants of the Cupertino that the fire department depends on when you go and then get the water from the incident happen. Do we have regular checks on that? I mean, do you know that they have water and their regular, pressure is there?
We do. So typically, or every year, we have our fire hydrant, basically their flows, their functional, they're not actually flow tests to get how many gallons can you get out of it, but they're flow tests to make sure that they're operating properly. And then we have two efforts, one in the fall or late year, and then we clean up or anything that wasn't completed, or we mop up anything that wasn't completed. So we get through every fire hydrant every year. And we work with the water purveyors. We have a number of different water purveyors that we work with. So if any are found to be out of service, damaged, or needing any kind of maintenance, and they'll be designated and triaged as if it's out of service, then it's handled with higher priority. And usually we're seeing those handled within about 2 to 3 weeks. It is what we typically see for a hydrant that's out of service. And then it goes into our system and identified as a hydrant that's not available for a fire group.
So it's a yearly checking.
We are checking out, and we check those every year. As a matter of fact, we have a GIS tool that allows us, and it's an iPad based tool, so crews can go out and actually make sure that they're flowing the way they're supposed to and functional. So I think we should be finishing up probably within the next month or two. But we get out to see them every year.
And the new house, we have must sprinklers, right? That is already.
Yes, new construction requires sprinklers. Any significant remodel will also typically trigger sprinklers.
Really?
And then for most laws, they're not retroactive. So some of the new stuff that's coming in there, or there is a grace period for those that are actually higher, and that's typical for building code type of things like that, where you see sprinklers being prescribed for any new construction.
Yes. Thank you very much, Deputy Director, for the detailed data as always. I have a couple of questions. One is, I'm not sure in your data or the metrics you have covered the traffic related emergency calls, how many year on year you attend, right? Whether it's a pedestrian incidents or like a traffic accidents.
So in the EMS, they're all aggregated. We do actually have the data standards that we use do have that level of detail. They're not in this particular, but they are numbers that we actually have. So if you're looking for the breakdown of EMS calls, that is something that we typically track and then we report back to internally.
So when we talk to neighbors, especially in Cupertino, one of their prime concerns is pedestrian safety, right? So I just want to see, if possible, can we get a metric, what is the data trend of how many calls you are getting related to, pedestrian incidents?
Oh, so it would be specifically for pedestrian involved incidents. I could actually get that data.
We have that.
Oh, you have it?
Oh, in your,
Yeah, on our report, you have it on the back page of
okay,
the accidents related to
And that's actually,
pedestrian accidents or accident with no details.
I see. Yeah, thank you. So one more question again, with all this concrete blocks restricting, supporting the bike lanes. what I'm hearing from residents, they're all primarily concerned how the emergency vehicle can rotate, especially school hours, busy hours, or the congested areas like McKellen Road or other roads, right? So how do you collaborate with sheriff's office to make sure your emergency vehicle can go in the event of emergencies during traffic congestion or these loads?
Yeah, I was actually curious about that when you mentioned it earlier. So the concrete blocks that you're referring to, are those being placed? I guess.
For the
They
bike
already
lane.
are.
Years ago, Holland Road.
Oh,
The DNs also they added one lane, they restricted one lane
and they're basically for routing and
for the bike
For the
safety.
bike.
bike lane. Oh, yeah, the green lanes, yeah. When those came in, um, those came in on an initiative in order to create the,
Safety.
yeah, route for people.
For bike
on
safety.
Bikes. One of the things that we did take a look at is, do we actually have the ability to pass? Are the roads wide enough? In a lot of areas, they've created challenges. And for fire crews, any that came through, if there's a traffic calming measure, essentially that's a category that we speed bumps or roundabouts or other types of barriers, but we take a look at those. So we typically do see those, and I know that we had for McClellan, had an opportunity to make sure that we did have enough opportunity to pass, and had the minimum of 20-foot road. So, I believe that all of them should conform. I'm not aware of any that don't. I haven't heard any complaints from fire crews because they're the ones that actually tell us there's a problem. And typically when one is proposed, any type of barrier like that, we'll ask a fire crew to go out there and evaluate it for us, in addition to having it submitted by the city. Because the fire code essentially says that any kind of traffic calming measure or any other device that could delay a response is actually something that is not, it has to go through us. And it is, we do try to partner with the local jurisdiction and balance public safety, pedestrian and bicycle safety, so that there could be some kind of solution that helps. And making sure that we still can respond. So there's that partnership that we have, as opposed to just saying, no, you can't do it. I mean, the reality of is it, the roads have to be shared. So if there's an area or a specific device or group of devices, we can look into them.
Okay, I mean, I only know very limited roads,
Mm.
especially where like for the schools, right?
Yeah.
But like, yeah, maybe I can send you offline or
I probably have the plans that were submitted for them too, because I know when the bike lanes started coming in, we got pretty detailed plans and we made comments on some of them, and we asked for certain or accommodated.
so you, in your opinion, all those approvals, all those reviews are done and you are quite confident that the roads, even the narrow roads, the emergency vehicle easily maneuver.
I very rarely would use those words. Very confident that very so I would say that I'm unaware of any scenario that has been created that exists that we actually can't pass under normal circumstances. And we're always eager to hear of any that might, and we will look into it to make sure, but I'm not aware of any actually throughout our fire district where a new bike lane has created a condition where we cannot get through.
But
Thank
I, this is my personal, experience. I think, for drive, fire truck, they're very expert. They're very, expertise is very high. In certain area, I saw the bike lanes and those safety lanes, feels to me, I don't know, like, have we done overdone, how much study we have done? Because now that taking a right turn, I feel like sometimes like a 25% chance that I'll be encountered an accident or something, that, it becomes, very difficult in certain cases. So I don't know exactly, I mean, some of these things are good one way, but everything has a good side and bad side. So the negative side, how much study and how much real, city planning input was taken, because our urban, city planners, how much, safety is there, because The people who are driving, they're more suspecting the accident or those kind of cases, right? A lot of different, kinds of drivers on the road, right? Different skill, driver, different skill set. So anyway, but that's a different problem. I don't think, this is here, but actually.
Yeah, I don't know that there was a question there,
Yeah.
but many of the things you just said, I have thought myself.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's the comment. It's not a question,
Right.
maybe
So if I may ask, if you have any recommendations, I understand, right, or suggestions for in some streets of the Cupertino where replacing these concrete blocks with the alternative, like some other there are other means to protect the bike paths. So if you have any recommendations, would you be able to share to the Public Safety Commission?
I would say that just to be as concise as possible, I'm always interested in continuous improvement. So if there was an opportunity to evaluate the effectiveness of something, or if there was a better solution, that would be something. We would actually take a look at, we receive suggestions all the time. And we evaluate them, and we have tried different things that we've seen in other places, even other states. Some of them worked and some of them did not work as well. So we're always open to it. But if this commission were to look at the effectiveness of the devices in place, that could potentially provide some kind of iteration. And I think that the only other thing that I would say from the fire department standpoint is that I would just urge that any local jurisdiction should come to us before they actually start planning something. And so coming to us early with any traffic calming measure, because we typically are very careful when one is proposed, because every single, say, speed bump or speed hump can delay us by 10 seconds. And if you have too many, and we have some pretty strict rules on them, so.
So through the chair, we're getting a little bit into something that we may want to bring.
yes, yeah, we want to take.
That's making future agenda items. Also, just out of respect for Captain Valenzuela, it is 8:38. So
Yeah,
we hold questions, your sheriff's office report, and then.
Yes, I mean, that makes sense. I think we're pretty much done most of the comments. Yeah, I think this is a good topic that you brought up, this
Future
for the future agenda. I think actually was something. So, but thank you, Martha, for, reminding us of the time, appreciate it. So, we can go, we can accept the report right now, right? And then, okay.
So just in the spirit of trying to save some time, I'm just gonna cover two things. I'm just gonna cover the response times. If you can go to the second page here. This is just a breakdown of response times. When it comes to the sheriff's office, our response times are contractually obligated. Essentially, it's a staffing issue, and how fast can we get to certain things, right? The way we get to a call in Cupertino is a lot shorter than the time it takes for like Los Altos Hills, right? Our priority one calls within Cupertino we have to be there by 5 minutes. In other states, we have different times because of staffing and distances to the area. For Los Altos Hills, if you have a call, it's gonna take you about 12 minutes to get to the other side of town, of Painesville. So that's why response times are based upon the distance sometimes where and the staffing levels. But here in Cupertino, our priority one calls, which means life or death calls, so those are there's somebody in my home, there's somebody shooting up something, big time felony, we have to be there 5 minutes. Now, 5 minutes, that means when the call taker came in and us being there on scene. So as you can see, right now, we're about 3 minutes and 45 seconds as an average response time for that. Our numbers were a little bit skewed the end of the year last year, only because we had a little learning curve that when a 17-year-old goes missing, that's also considered a priority one call. When it hasn't been home for 2 days or 3 days, that's considered a priority one call. So sometimes those are not the things that we expedite to, especially when they're a runaway juvenile for, it's been gone for a couple days, but we learned that. So now we have to get there as soon as possible with missing juveniles, no matter what the age is and how long they've been gone for. So that's it. If you have any specific questions about the priority calls, alarm, for example, a residential alarm, that's a priority 2 call. A parking complaint is going to be a priority 3 call. we'll get there within, the 20 minutes that we get the call. So those are where our stats right now, and I'll move on to the next page just to cover some of the property crimes. The biggest one I want to address is residential burglaries, because that's always a hot topic here. And you can see that we went from 13-7, 14-5, 9, and 4. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I asked our detectives, what do you think is causing this number to come down? ALPRs.
Oh.
The crooks know where the ALPRs. ALPRs. They know where they're at. They know what streets are on. It's all public information. So that's been the biggest declining factor. The more ALPRs we have, the numbers go down.
Very nice.
And that, like I said, yeah, that's the biggest key. We do have a huge increase right now on stolen license plates. And crooks will steal license plates matching the same type of vehicle that they have. That way the cameras don't trigger it. So increase in stolen license plates, increase in what they call like a film they can put on license plates. So when the camera takes the picture, it blocks out the numbers. So a lot of those are happening, but as you can see, it's getting a little bit harder and harder for crooks to start committing crime, residential burglaries. Just give you a success story, which usually happen a lot of times, but June 17th, we had a homeowner who was away in a different state call us, and via their cameras, we're able to detect somebody in their home. We got there, we surrounded the place, we caught him running out the back door, we gave chase and we arrested him. This was on Marengo Drive, which is in the south side of Cupertino.
Oh, wow.
Also,
That's very good.
it doesn't happen very often. These are very rare where we catch burglars in the act, but we caught one, so.
So if somebody is out of state and if they call a 911, my cell phone, if I'm in Texas, I'm calling there.
They actually called their non-emergency line. They were actually very, very smart to call we push that out information to the public a lot. Don't call 911 if you're out of state.
So then how they reached out, and what is the?
They called a non-emergency line and they got their dispatch center right away. They told us there was somebody in their home. We got there fairly quickly, surrounded the house. Before we can make announcements, the guy figured out over there. Yeah, non-emergency line. They'll go straight to our dispatch center. And yes, we have had a couple success stories with ALPRs. We did make our first stolen vehicle arrest yesterday. It came out as a stolen vehicle right here on Stevens Creek at Stelling. Our deputies caught up to it on Blaney, probably going over Main Street or someplace like that, but we arrested the individual. They gave up pretty quickly. And we arrested him for a stolen vehicle and a couple other felonies, so. Now, I'm gonna open up for questions. I know there's some questions, and if you have any questions about some of the crime stats, the accidents, the statistics, and stuff like that, I'd be more than happy to
I
answer.
do have one question.
Yeah.
Not related to anything you presented. It's with regard to code enforcement. How, does the city have to do code enforcement, or is the sheriff's office involved?
We help out code enforcement, but for the most part, the city has their own code enforcement. And so a lot of the muni codes, they have code enforcement officers that go out there and
For
enforce.
example, for noise or something, is it the city's responsibility, or is that?
It depends. If code enforcement is not working, we'll handle the noise complaint.
Okay.
But most of the time.
How does it trigger, how do you get triggered?
Code enforcement is on our radio. They're on our
Okay.
frequency, so they'll know which calls they need to respond to and which ones are ours.
Okay, so somebody calls code enforcement and it's a noise. For that matter, pickleball noise, let's say, and so the city doesn't respond right away.
Usually code enforcement will go out to that, yeah.
Yeah, and if the city doesn't respond
Of
in a
course.
certain.
Then after hours,
After
we'll go respond,
okay,
yeah.
After hours.
If a code enforcement officer is not on duty, we'll respond.
Yeah.
Straight, I have one question. These ALPR systems are connected to those cameras that city is supposed to install, or is it different?
I'm sorry.
I'm saying.
The ALPRs are those cameras.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, ALPRs are the cameras, and as you were mentioning of the hits that we're getting, it's because our deputies are on the same frequency channel for Cupertino, Saratoga, Peltos Hills, and unincorporated, and there's a lot of cameras in those cities,
Awesome.
so they're all getting notified of all the hits in those cities.
And all our cameras are not installed right now, right?
They're installed.
They're installed, they're active.
or online?
How many did we have? I thought it was 11.
15.
Oh, 50.
15, yeah, I remember, yeah.
But the option of the city did leave the option for residents to purchase their own or businesses to purchase their own, so, and they can link up to the city.
They can link up to the city, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So this is something also, hopefully, in our subcommittee recommendation comes, I think this is a good idea.
It's a great idea for the city to save money. This is the same way Saratoga has. Saratoga only owns 7 license plate readers, but they actually have 52 in town that are owned by residents, so,
The private,
yes.
private area, yeah.
So what is the process for getting the private ALPR?
From my understanding is residents can contact Flock directly, or groups of neighborhoods can contact Flock, or businesses can contact Flock directly and let them know to live in Cupertino. Marta, correct me if I'm wrong, that's what I was told before, and they can purchase the cameras.
So we should be able to find the contact for Flock online.
Yes.
Okay.
And this information is available right now in the private LPR system installation.
As far as I know, yes, that was the way the city pitched it, that residents can also
It's
opt
in
in.
the city website.
Is it on the city's website, the ALPR information?
The project.
There's information about the ALPRs, there's the notice that residents can buy their own, the city cannot promote businesses individually.
Right, so it's,
Okay, but how if somebody finds a camera or vendor and how to integrate the system that is available that information?
we currently only have a memorandum of understanding with Flock. We're gonna change that through with our county council, changing it to just a license plate reading technology. There are other vendors for license plate readers. The problem is right now, we're just not getting notifications because we don't have a memorandum of understanding with that company.
Anyways, we investigate it further in the. This is all, I think anybody has any other question,
Yes.
please go ahead.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, this is great news that the LPRs are effective, right? So I heard Sheriff, you are saying that license plates is now getting stolen more often. What are the recommendations, or like how are you tracking those?
So I was talking to our detectives and they told me that countywide and also in certain areas, there's just been a spike on license plate thefts. It's a trend that's not necessarily happening in Cupertino, but like it's happening around the county. Detectives talk to each other all the time. They share information. They meet every month. They meet with San Jose Police Department, Santa Clara Police Department, because their crooks don't stick in one area. They kind of just go through everything. So and a lot of cities have reported theft of license plates going up.
In the email we received from the stats, it was very detailed. Drone as first responder program was looks like it is operational. Can you give us a brief summary?
Yeah, so we don't have a drone as first responder program right now. We do have drones that our deputies can deploy on scene. A drone as first responder program is being implemented for example, City of Campbell has drone as first responders. What they did is they placed drones throughout the city, and they have an operator that when they get a call, the drone will go up and respond to the call. Shortens their response time. Maybe it might even tell the deputies or officers that they don't need to respond because it's not an emergency. So it's a really good program. We're kind of looking into that. San Jose Police Department is also working on a real-time crime center, which is, it's just a combined data of 911 calls coming in and drone assist responders to just improve our efficiency, and maybe not even respond to calls that we don't need to send an officer to, so.
But based on the data, what we are seeing, looks like that is a strongly recommended program.
It would be a strongly recommended program, and I will say this, it's very expensive. It's very, very expensive. But, our county is pushing for that, and it may be something that we work together with the city to fund it at some point in time, but drones are not very cheap, especially those drones, they're in a box essentially, and they're charging batteries. The next time they come back, they swap batteries and they respond from there. So, and they do have a flight time for about, I think, 45 minutes or something, but they're not very cheap. And they have really high definition cameras. They can zoom in. You can see license plates on vehicles and people, and so it's really intuitive system.
So do you have any ask for the Public Safety Commission with respect to that, or is it something only county has to initiate?
Right now, it's being looked at by our, what we call our county special operations team. And they have to look at the program, the cost of the program, and then at some point in time, we can come to the city and they say that would be a valuable tool. You know, when it comes to Cupertino, though, you have to understand that you're in a tri-city area, not only with the cities of Saratoga and Los Altos Hills, but you're also having incorporated Los Altos and incorporated Los Gatos. So it's not just having one city on board, because we all share resources here. And so it would be having everybody come in and agree to the cost of something like that.
I see. So right now, more patrols and staffing is the short-term solution.
Right now, yeah, we have drones we have drones in the patrol vehicles. I think we have 9 drones and with deputies, 9 pilots assigned to West Valley. We have the most out of any in the sheriff's office and obviously the patrols and once we work out the kinks of what we're actually looking for, whether it's a real-time crime center with drones first responders, we can work with the cities to get that going.
So again, in this report, which was shared through an email to all public safety commissioners, looks like the burglaries percentage solved burglaries are approximately 20%. Is that correct interpretation?
Yeah, I believe that was from our NICRIC report. Not, I think it was from the FBI stats. Yeah, those were accurate reports from our solvability rates. Now you realize that those are burglaries that are solved, identified. I mean, suspect identified, and necessarily doesn't mean the suspect was arrested. But there was an arrest warrant issued for the suspect, and a lot of times it could be the same suspect for 3 or 4 burglaries or something like that.
Shane, one thing is that ALPR, you know that there was a budget issue, $60,000 for a 1-year budget was approved by the, CPA, I heard last time. The next year budget is, Martha, what is the situation? Is it approved or is it being?
I believe they approved 2 years of it, right? Yeah, it was a two-year program. That's
Up to 2026.
It was 120,000. I can't remember exactly the cost of it. Yeah.
Yeah, through 2026.
The cameras are essentially $3,000 a piece.
But there's a recurring maintenance budget, right?
Yeah, so the maintenance costs are included in the budget for this upcoming fiscal year. And moving forward, the budget is decided by council.
Do we need to advocate for that? Because this, if we see good result on that, for public safety commission, we advocate at certain point. City council,
So that is something the commission could do, but that would be next year, close to when the budget cycle starts up again, because that's.
Can you let us know when this year budget is getting, expired and how many months before we need to go and, get it, approval thing going? So that, we can, from commission, we can at least take action on that.
Any other questions?
No.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
The chair would like to open public comment.
Public comments here and then on agenda item.
Okay,
No public comment. So that's good, then we can save some time and now. So next is, so this report, we don't need to formally accept, we can also accept it, right?
Please no seconds.
And so next is the future agenda, right?
yep, we have the commissioner reports and staff report.
Report and okay, staff and commission report, okay.
Okay, so would you prefer to hear the staff report first or the commissioner?
The staff is fine.
Commissioner's report. Okay. All right, so staff update. So volunteer activities, like I mentioned, we had the volunteer feedback meeting on June 23rd. That was hosted by the mayor. And as I said before, the survey will be open until tomorrow. CARES, which is the Cupertino Amateur Radio Emergency Services, had their monthly meeting. They do take June off for their monthly meetings. Travel schedules. They were at the fireworks on the 4th of July, as part of their regularly scheduled activities. And the 28th of June was CARES Field Day, which is their big event for the year where they test out all of their equipment. And can speak with everyone, and, I believe a couple council members, usually attend. CERT, which is Community Emergency Response Team, is participating in a county exercise. And, again, attended the fireworks. MRC, Medical Reserve Corps, there was a medical area exercise, scheduled that has been postponed for a bit later in the year. And they have a few, trainings coming up, specifically, I've been told that there is a Stop the Bleed training coming up. For the block leader program, as I mentioned, there were 2 orientations scheduled for new block leaders. They first was canceled for no registrations, and the second, no one showed up. The next meeting is, July 20th. We will have a presentation, from the, senior center discussing programs and events that are available to residents, in the city. I mentioned before, the May meeting was a presentation from the Fire Safe Council, and we are working on a directory for block leaders. I will note that summer is the main time for, block parties and community events. And we've got National Night Out coming up on August 5th. Registration for that closed today. And last time I checked, we had 21 participating neighborhoods. Staff actions. So there were a couple trainings provided by Ken Erickson. So there were the, neighborhood and personal preparedness classes, some first aid classes, CPR/AD, and like I mentioned, Stop the Bleed. July 4th, I was at the incident command post, and Ken was also with the volunteers in case they were needed. And in preparedness actions, as our planning team mentioned, we are working on the evacuation study. And it has come up before, but today we had, I attended the Language Access and Accessibility Alert and Warning Working Group to discuss best practices. That is a nationwide group. And so I'm hoping that we can have someone who spoke at one of those meetings come and speak with us here.
So these trainings were only targeted for the staff?
No, those are trainings provided by staff to the community.
It's already happened, huh? So.
Yes. Right, and finally, federal changes and impacts. So we've got cuts to FEMA, HUD, HHS, CDC, NOAA, pretty much everything. I called out these specific agencies because these are the cuts that are going to impact us the most. NOAA and the National Weather Service. We have already heard that there are stations in parts of the country that they will no longer have overnight staffing. So if there's an alert that needs to go out overnight, they will not have the staff there able to keep track on a tornado or anything like that.
So what about us?
Yeah, so I'll get to that. And then we'll do questions later. Additionally, the damage threshold to qualify for federal aid has increased. So the county would need to incur $35 million in damage to qualify for aid. The county has never hit that level before. So everything that has happened, none of that would have been qualifying for federal aid. There are a couple other things that are rumored and wishy-washy, but I wanted to bring the things that we know for sure. But like I said, disaster preparedness and response is reliant on many government agencies, and cuts could have severe consequences. I also have heard anecdotally, when we have fires here in California, we're sometimes calling in fire response from Canada and from Mexico. Anecdotally, there's a concern that those firefighters would not actually be able to respond because they would would run into some issues with immigration, again, anecdotally. And finally, just reminders to please sign up for Alert SCC. And Gov Delivery is the way that the city puts out all of the newsletters and information. If you could please spread the word about both Alert SCC and Gov Delivery.
How do you get this? There is information where you get.
SCC, yeah, Alert SCC, there is a link on the city.
Okay. That we have to get that.
Are there
But
any
how do you get the other one?
Gov Delivery? Every single webpage on the city website
Has it?
has a little thing that says sign up for our newsletters. It'll then take you to a page that has a list of every single newsletter, and you can sign up for the topics that interest you.
So some of this, the city has a lot of people kind of volunteer event, public event that is happening, there's training stuff that happens, right? So a lot of things happen in the different part of the city, so. Is there a single calendar that, this week or this?
Yes,
day,
there's the
this 5
city
days,
calendar.
City calendar?
Yeah.
Any other question?
Did have a question, but I can't. Also, the weather thing that you said,
Yes.
is our station, I mean, whichever the weather station is that affected, do you know?
So we are part of a larger operational area. Our station is in Monterey. And that is all of the Bay Area. There.
Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
So the future trainings are on the Cupertino website, city website?
Mhm.
That's all.
Then we can go to the next.
Okay. So commissioner reports,
Yes, please.
if any commissioners have anything to report. Okay. Then we can move to future agenda setting.
Yeah, future. A couple of things we discussed, right? One is, is that a report, I think our current report should we do it for future meeting, the subcommittee? We'll get it in the next meeting or in the intermediate.
Yeah, maybe like what we can do is like, so I think there were like those four areas,
Four
right?
areas.
So there's like, I guess the first area, like, I think initially you said like tools and instrumentation, but maybe we can consider that as like procurement streamlining,
Yeah, yeah.
say. So like streamline procurement, and then the second I think was,
Second
Like,
was the.
recruitment.
Vice Chair, those are outside the scope of the current sub.
right, okay, yeah. So I guess maybe should we like dissolve that subcommittee and then like make a new one, or maybe just the four of us do something and then.
And come up with the presentations next time.
Yeah, so maybe we don't even need a subcommittee for that.
No, because we're all for them.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but all four, because of the Brown Act, can we talk outside?
Okay.
So that's the problem.
Yeah, but I think like
You are
each one of
able
us,
to go individually.
yeah, exactly.
Learn about things and bring them back.
So what
under
we can do,
commissioner
yeah, so what we can do, that right now we can decide these four topics.
Sure.
We are independent of the research and the work with Marta.
No, instead of all of us doing the four topics.
Yeah,
we
four
just
topics,
split
four
the-
of us, please, that's what I'm saying, yeah, each of us bring our own thing and then that is better than this brown over black thing,
Yeah.
right? Okay, then let's do that.
Case
So-
follow up, I'll take up, that's what I want to do.
Alright, I guess I can probably take the like procurement streamlining.
Yeah.
and Figure out like some
So the,
specific ideas.
so you are saying that the procurement part, yeah, doing, right, so,
Yeah. So I guess like the goal would be like,
okay, so.
for each of those four things, like
This is say, okay,
we research and then come with like just
yes,
1-2 specific
very,
ideas.
very specific recommendation, yeah, and then hiring part, who's gonna do? Hiring part.
You or
Hiring part, you want to pick, hiring the part.
I mean, I don't understand
The,
the objective of what I'm doing, the
Yeah.
hiring.
okay,
Oh yeah, so I think it's like there's like, I guess, the first two, like streamlining procurement and then the recruitment / hiring bottleneck. I guess it's like, because we've now identified those as problems, or like they've been identified as needs by the department. I guess it's basically like our,
Is it something we have control over? even?
Yeah, there's nothing we can do.
well, we can do things like, I don't know, figuring out how to promote like the sheriff's academy more.
Okay.
I think it's
All right,
popular.
Commissioners, this is not something we can discuss at length now, so
Let's add it teacher agenda.
Teacher,
Something that you are interested in on your own, go and investigate that and then come back and give a report out during the commissioner.
Commissioner.
Alright, sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, let's add future agendas.
yeah, so yeah, that's why we are saying the future agenda. So each of us like we decided right now, right? Each of us who takes which one. So you are taking the first one, right? The procurement part.
Sure. This is not something that we're discussing in depth.
So we are distributing. That who is taking which one. We are not discussing this thing. So we are
Okay,
saying.
so you can. Okay, so you can make a motion to assign.
Yeah, make a motion to assign. So we are making, I'm making a motion to assign basically for the next.
And I second that motion, so.
Okay, so. So you're making a motion to assign what topic to what person?
So. So helping, the sheriff's department and streamlining the procurement and what help they need. So that part is, Commissioner Seed, right? So he can go and investigate and bring up a report on that and specific and very specific recommendation.
Okay, do I have a second?
Yeah, I second.
And then,
Roll call vote. So chair?
yes,
Okay,
Yes.
Vice chair? Passes unanimously. All right, so
and
the second one?
yeah, the second one is, that already, the case follow-up and the outcome, like when a problem happens. How that gets handled, what is the workflow for that and how that gets handled. Just with some specific example case to get it and make it more, bring it to this, this commission as well as we can share it to the public also. if we-
Right, like a transparency of what happened in the case.
And
And you were assigning that to,
I'm recommending to, Commissioner Begur.
okay?
Second that.
And the third one is.
Hold on,
Yeah, we-
vote.
Roll call vote.
Yeah.
Chair,
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Vice chair?
Yeah.
Commissioner Baker?
Yes.
Okay, and the third?
The third one is saying the neighborhood watch program, and that one is how we can leverage neighborhood watch as well as the
Block leader.
the block leader program more effectively for especially for the communication awareness of city like safety and the health and safety and the fire also everything. So some specific recommendation on that and recommending that if Commissioner Ravi can be taking that.
Can you repeat that? I want to make sure I talk.
So basically, what we are saying that how effectively we can leverage neighborhood
The two
watch on the block
programs.
and block leader program to basically raising the awareness and and the communication to people on the different programs and the communication that city and the fire department and the sheriff department want to do. So, and how effectively we can use this program to do that.
So, I mean, in my opinion, already the monthly meeting and the quarterly meeting are taking that objective, right? They are having a monthly meeting that Martha
We need to
conducts.
see the effectiveness.
Yeah.
So am I allowed to attend those meetings outside as a public safety commissioner?
Sure.
The block leader meetings are open to the public.
The block, what if neighborhood watch?
The neighborhood watch meetings are held by neighborhoods.
Okay,
So what you can do, Commissioner Ravi, instead of discussing here, you can work with Martha on this one, because if you remember the previous meeting.
Okay.
I think even the fire marshal said that their communication doesn't go. People ignore it. So what is the most effective way to reach out and make people aware of that?
all
I
right.
think that is
No.
the whole idea, like,
No.
we are private agency, how we can make people aware, right? So think more on this one and work with Martha on this one.
Okay, do I have a second?
Yes,
Okay, roll call vote, chair,
yes.
vice chair,
Yes.
And the last one, we said that, that raising the awareness, on, the department recruitment, what are the challenges, understanding that any way we can help and specific recommendation we can put. So that is the last one, and I can take that.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay.
And if I need any help on that,
Yes,
need help on that, I will reach out to Marta and Sharif you, and then we'll get some more information to understand the process and the practices and try to, see that how we can help. Okay.
Okay, any other major agenda items?
yes,
The list.
I have few.
Yeah.
Okay, first I want to, I can just list out, or do I need to?
So for agenda items, more. This is Jay. A second, unless.
Oh, then second, okay.
So,
So, yeah, I can, recommend Ravi to propose in the second agenda for the next meeting.
So the motion is there, so I can go ahead, right?
so for each, proposed.
For each, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I move that we add agenda with agenda, future agendas with a specific time. That way we know whether it's 3 hours meeting or 4 hours meeting. I heard that feedback that these meetings are running longer, again from some residents who watch this meeting. So I want to see if we can, for every topic, if we can come up with the approximate time.
Okay,
limit.
that's at the discretion of the chair. That's not an agenda item.
That's discussion of the chair,
At the discretion of the chair.
the chairs.
So we can
So
show.
the chair can set time limits.
So
You can have that
Yeah.
conversation with him.
Yeah.
I can shoot any email to him and discuss.
Yeah, you can request that and then we can,
Okay, so the second, I'm more, okay, sorry, I'm not following the Rosenberg rules properly, but I want to introduce a motion that we add recess as part of the agenda itself.
That is also at the discretion of the chair,
that is also.
not an agenda item.
Discussion of the chair, okay.
I mean, it doesn't need to be a special meeting for that, just then we can then.
Okay. Then I want to introduce another motion to add ALPR's effectiveness and the process to procure more ALPRs if they're effective, like ROI, as the next meeting is in the topic.
Okay, is there a second?
Second. Okay. Do we need to vote everybody, or that's it?
Nope, as long as there's a second.
Okay, second is good. And
So just a clarification on that, that report will be that effectiveness. It will be a discussion or somebody will bring up the data based on that we will discuss it. How we want to. What is the detail? How?
looks like the report from the sheriff's office already has the reduced numbers. So I want to show that, okay, this is the reduction, and we want to brainstorm and see if we can recommend CP to double down on the.
Basically, based on the sheriff's report, we can.
Yeah, I can come up with a more some presentation now. And I have a few more topics, but if anyone else has any other topics, you want to go ahead?
Think we.
Oh, I guess like I moved that we had an agenda item about the Rainbow Road, or is it Rainbow? The thing that
Yeah, the
Advait mentioned, like, so discussing,
traffic.
I guess, yeah,
patterns.
I guess motion to add discussing hazard mitigation for Rainbow.
Is that under purview? Okay, I'll double check if it's
Okay.
under our purview, but yes, is there a second to that?
I want to just.
I seconded that.
Okay, second.
Do you want to say
No,
something?
I just wanted to make it a little more generic than just instead of the specific rainbow. I was saying that is it possible to little bit like broad it that see that what are the traffic speed and how our, sheriff's department is operating on handling the speeding areas. And which, which street is what, but this is somebody, but brought up saying.
That is broad, but if we go down with one specific thing,
That
and we have more.
That can be more, yeah, that's fine, so we can go to the broad, makes sense.
Okay.
That should be enough, right? We all-
Yeah, that would be, that is
So
something.
these things also, along with the other reports, regular agenda, I think. So there will be staff report, there will be sheriff's department report, fire department report.
Okay, so would you like to adjourn the meeting?
Yes.